because it got to the point where I was told, hey, you have to have X amount of followers on ArtStation. You have to have X amount of followers. Dude, it was
no
weird.
way.
Yeah.
You were told that?
Yeah, it was.
No fucking way. Environment artists don't get followers on ArtStation.
Exactly. No, it's weird. It was really, really bizarre. And
that's the whole point I started Atmo, was for environment artists, because we get no recognition.
Exactly.
All right, so in this podcast, we're going to have Juan Nuno, who is a principal environment artist for games like Apex Legends, and he also has a background in some film and cinematics. Like usual, we start off with getting to know him, his life, his background, and then we go to our website, atmovfx.com, to check out his artwork and his breakdowns, and then we go over some of his techniques and methods, and also check out the new art gallery layout that has been updated on our website at atmovfx.com. With this update, I try to make art more art-focused and easier to browse and check out the other work inside their portfolios, and much more is to come. And I hope to see you guys upload your work on there as well. And if you need some senior work done on your vistas or skyboxes for your games, or matte paintings on your films and television shows, be sure to hit me up so we can collaborate on something. So let's get to this. We are back with another podcast with Juan Nuno. It's Nuno, right?
It's Nuno, but it's fine. It's Nuno's totally okay.
Sweet. He is actually a bud of mine from my working on Apex Legends. He used to work with me over there, but he's left. So he's a principal environment artist over at, where are you at right now?
I'm at Playside Studios here in Melbourne, Australia. I'm actually a senior artist there, or here, I guess. But I used to be a principal environment artist for the last 5 years at Respawn and other places.
Yeah, we're both no more over there, moving on with our lives.
Yeah, no, that was I loved my time there. It's just a shame about I don't know if we want to get into the nitty gritty of it, but yeah, it's just the same shame of the current state of game dev in general, and just the entertainment industry with the global recession and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a shame when all these layoffs are happening. I've moved to the other side of the world, and yeah, I'm very fortunate to have a job right now.
Yeah, we can get into those details a bit more, but I'd like to get to know more about your earlier bits and how it's going over in Australia and everything. So yeah, I know that you're also at Modular building. You love your material creations and substance designer. How did you even get into games? I think you mentioned before that you did TV and film before you got into games, right?
Yeah, like a weird hybrid of it as well. We were kind of on the forefront of making some pretty cool stuff. I think that is kind of universally used nowadays, right? Which is using Unreal to make cinematics and things like that. But yeah, a little bit on me. Yeah, the way I got into, I guess to answer the first question, the way I got into video games, or just the entertainment industry in general, I really wanted to be a makeup VFX artist. So I really wanted to work on practical effects and gory makeup and making robots, prosthetics, things like that. And at the time, this was super early 2000s. Things were really shifting over to more of the CG side, right? A lot of people were starting to utilize CG stuff for practical effects and stuff. So that was a bit of a bummer, but also a cool opportunity, because I've always loved playing video games, and I love film and stuff. So I was like, cool, what does that look like? So I was playing Final Fantasy X. I remember this. I was playing Final Fantasy X, and I was playing the game and everything, and I absolutely loved the game. But anytime the cinematics came on, that was a big, my jaw dropped every single time. I'm just like, how the fuck do they do that? That's what I want to do. You know what I mean? Gameplay's cool, gameplay's fun, but there's something about the impactful moments that you can have with storytelling, and just if it's making a film within your video game, right, to tell impactful stories. That was a thing, and I was just kind of how do they get that fidelity? Talking about it now, it's you kind of go back to it, and you're like, oh, that looks kind of like crap or whatever. But at the time, it's just out of this world, tech and methods that they use to render this stuff. so then I went to school, and I was lucky enough to be like, hey, this is kind of what I want to do and what I kind of want to gear myself towards. So I was really lucky to know that that's kind of the path that I wanted to go. I didn't know that I wanted to do environment art, because I never even knew that was an option, to
Yeah.
be honest. I thought it was going to be like a character artist or like VFX artist or something along those lines. And then I made my first ever environment in school, and I was like, that's really cool to make, like, the scenarios, if you would, or the, just the overall environment that like the players either play around in, or whatever is being shot in, the background for film or games. And there was something just really satisfying about making a ton of different assets, and then just kind of set dressing and being able to do storytelling through environmental, staging and stuff. That was a thing that I really, really enjoyed, and I kind of latched onto it. And I learned everything I possibly could from that end, and just taught myself a ton of, programs and workflows and stuff. And yeah,
So
sorry.
did you take any like courses, classes?
So yeah, I went to the Art Institute of San Bernardino, which was, sadly not a great school, in the sense of, how a lot of art schools aren't great schools. But I will say this: doing workshops and teaching at different schools, what you put in is kind of what you get out, right? If that makes sense. It's like, because I've been to very prestigious, like, taught at very prestigious schools. I've taught at, like, community colleges, stuff like that. And honestly, it always kind of feels the same. There's like usually one or two people who like get it, who like understand what they're trying to do and like really achieving those goals, while other people are just kind of like skirting through, or they think that this is what they want to do, but they don't put in the time, they don't put in the effort, and it's kind of like, these people sometimes never get a job, or whatever that situation is. So it's I kind of felt like what you put in is kind of what you get out of it. But the most important thing, I think, is always, making friends, talking to your peers while you're in those situations. I think that that's probably one of the most important things about, if you do go to school for this kind of stuff, is not so much of course the work is really important, but I would say what's even more important is making friends and having peers to talk to, so you can actually, riff off each other, or you never know who's going to be able to get you a job, or who you're going to be able to help out to get a job that, then in turn, maybe, it's as you know, it's a very small industry, and everyone talks to each other, and we're all very much like, hey, I would work with that guy in a heartbeat, or I'd work with her, or I would work with this person.
Yeah.
But actually, no, I don't recommend working with that person. The work is awesome, but maybe they're an asshole to work with or something, right?
Yeah, no, it's real. You definitely,
yeah,
I feel like most jobs, like new jobs, especially as you're working, it's usually through recommendations, or someone just
100%. Yeah,
put your reel on the top of the list, kind of thing.
100%. Yeah, and I know I've done my part to just help as many people as I can out who deserve it, in my opinion, right? Who are like genuinely very good workers, or great personalities to be around. And yeah, like that's what I find most important in this industry, man. Like, I've never once said to myself, oh, I really miss that project. You know what I mean? I've never said, oh, I really miss working on X. What I always miss is the people I worked with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I always miss the team. I never say like, oh fuck, I really miss working on, Riot cinematics. It's like, it was always, I miss working with that team. That team was killer, or the Apex team, or the Dauntless team, or whichever project I've been a part of. It's always been, I miss the people more than anything. And it's nice because outside of work we get to hang out and chat and stuff like that, and do stuff like this, right, where we're able to kind of chat. So it's awesome.
Yeah. You're definitely the chatty one. Like you give the energy in the room.
Try my best.
Our Monday mornings.
I hope it's not annoying. That's my one self-conscious
It fills
thing.
the quiet space, especially now that we're not working. So a lot of people are kind of shy or awkward and stuff. So you feel the awkward silence. You do a good job with that.
No, and that is a thing too. I have
especially during like Zoom, like working from home. That's a whole different ballgame.
I was actually very surprised how we were able to kind of like foster a really good community of like people on our team at Respawn, and like I felt like we were all pretty genuine with each other and very like open to conversation and stuff, which is really, really cool. And that's the thing that I tried my hardest to really kind of invoke if I could, right? To be like, hey, everyone should have the right to speak in the sense of like, if it's constructive, if it's just chatting or anything like that. Because there are a lot of shy people. So there are times where I need to learn to shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. Can I cuss on this, by the way?
Yes, you can.
Okay. All right. It's like, there are times where I'm like, hey, let other people talk. You know what I mean? Because there are people who like myself or others where, you know, maybe it feels like we're dominating the conversation or anything. So I'm trying to put it always at the front of my head of like, ask other people questions who don't chat, right? Or anything like that. Even if it's as simple as like, hey, what did you do this weekend? And I'll try to maybe like call on someone. It's like, hey, X person, what did you do this weekend? Right. And if people don't want to chat, or if they, you know, things like that, you can kind of feel it. You know what I mean? And that's totally okay. But yeah, kind of to your point, I think that's really important nowadays, especially with more people working from home, is to hopefully, you know, foster more community in your team, I guess, and just trying to like lift each other up and chat with each other. If that's like, you know, a chunk of time of making, you know, what we all used to do in the studio, which is like have like coffee chats, right? It's like, hey Jordan, let's go grab a quick coffee. Let's chat about the project or what we're working on, or just
go
life
to lunch.
stuff. Yeah, or go to lunch. Yeah, and it's really difficult nowadays.
Yeah, you definitely get more isolated work from home. Now, of course, they're trying to get rid of the whole remote work and trying to make it hybrid or whatever. And it's like they're using the excuse of, oh, we're trying to, you know, create better performance and creativity. And it's like, that's I
have my opinions on that.
Yeah,
but yeah,
like,
you know, we've shipped many successful things. Well,
exactly.
You know, many studios have done very good working from home, and again, it's a choice too. It's one of those things. I know there's a lot of people who love working at the studio, and that's awesome too. It's got, to me, they both have their pros and cons.
I simply think it's a financial decision. It's not performance, because it's extremely easy to tell if you're performing or not performing on the art side, at least.
Absolutely, yeah.
Did you hit the deadline or did you not? That's it.
It really is that black. Yeah, it really is that black and white. And to me, it's like a thing that, you know, and that's a different thing, where it's like if a studio's paying for a space and they want to utilize that space,
just be honest about it.
100%. And it's also like my rent is not my problem. Like your rent is not my problem, in the sense of like, if you have a studio space, that's not really my problem if I'm able to work from home and do the same exact things. And that's the thing that's really important to me. Like, there's people who have kids, there's people who have a very long commute, there's people, you know what I mean? And it's one of those weird things where, yeah, to me, the best places that I've ever worked have always been the places that treat me like an adult. You know what I mean? Or treat the team like an adult. It's like, hey, are you getting your work done? Cool. I don't know. I don't care what you're doing from this time. If you're getting your work done, then cool. If you're not, then let's have that conversation. It shouldn't be, hey, this one team or this one person isn't doing well while working from home, therefore everyone has to come in. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's just a weird excuse. If it's a financial decision, if it's a micromanagement, you know, decision, whatever that means. But I understand wanting to have people in studio so they can collaborate and stuff. But even then, studios nowadays have a ton of remote workers that you need to be on Zoom anyways. So what's the point of being at the studio if everyone's on Zoom anyways to have a chat? You know what I mean? It's not like, you know, especially when you're at larger studios, right? Or even mid-sized studios where, you know, teams are 100+ people or things like that. You can't fit everyone into a room. I could totally understand this as like a super indie dev kind of things. Then you have like, you know, a small studio space where it's like 14 of you or something, right? And then for sure, then I can definitely see,
because then it feels like a family. Like, that's definitely going to be like, this is my family. We're going to be doing this, going through the trenches. But when you have so many people, you're not going to know everyone. So
absolutely, yeah. And also, I have family at home. I don't have family at work. I'm good. But no, in all seriousness, like that is one of the really important things to me. Either if it's remote or at the studio, man, it's always been more. The people have always been more important to me than the project, right? And when you're able to get both, it's, you know, it's a bonus home run kind of thing, right? And that's awesome. But like, I'd rather work on a game that I'm not, or a film that I'm not super passionate about with a killer team, than work with a whack team on like the latest and greatest, coolest thing, right?
Yeah.
But again, kind of going back to what you put in is what you get out is like, it's just, I think it goes the same way socially, right? It's like you have to kind of put yourself forward if you want to make friends, if you want to talk to people and stuff like that. That's, I don't know. It's just a thing that I really enjoy doing. I love learning what everyone else is doing around the studio as well. That way I can learn different pipelines and see how I can implement things into my own workflows, or how I can help other teams out of like, hey, I noticed that like on the environment side, we can probably help you out with X, Y, and Z. That way you're not having to do this on the audio front or the, lighting front or the VFX front, and just kind of like, all tides, high tides raise all ships kind of situation, right? To me, everyone should be helping each other out and making sure that everyone can do their best work as their.
The collaboration is the best part.
Absolutely.
I find that extremely fulfilling when you're.
It's a team. There's not one person making the whole game. For these types of studios, you know what I mean. You do have those unicorns out there, but for the most part, I would say 99% of people's experience in video games or film, it's like you are part of a team. You're not a cog in the wheel, but you are part of a team where that, it's very important to be collaborative and to know what other people are working on. Like, do yourself the favor.
So what was your big breakthrough to get into the industry?
So kind of going back to, making friends and not being an asshole. Like that's the best advice, is like, just don't be an asshole. Don't be a dick. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that will get you very far. And, for me, I was very fortunate. So once I got out of school, I pretty much applied to like 200 places. This was back in LA, right? I was living in San Dimas at the time, which is like an hour and a half drive to like, downtown or, West Side LA. And I applied to like 200 places. Didn't hear back from, I think I heard back from 2 with like rejections. Right. And I was just like, it's a bummer, right? I have no money. I, pretty much living, in my car at that time.
Yeah.
And it's a sad situation, but, my buddy, Jesus Munoz, or I call him Chuy, he was able to get me a gig, or recommend me for a gig at Digital Domain, right? Working on, some pretty big stuff. And they needed someone who knew Unreal, right? And I was like, cool, yeah, I know a bit of Unreal. Why not? Let me say yes to all of this. And I was driving, almost 2 hours. Both of us were driving about that, each day, there, and then 2 hours back to get home because of traffic and stuff like that. So it was hard times. I was getting paid like $11 an hour or something. You know what I mean? It pretty much paid for gas for me to get to, this was in Playa Vista. Yeah. So this was like super, like pretty much to the ocean in LA. Right. So yeah, I got my start. I got to meet Jerry O'Flaherty, who is an amazing director and has been at the forefront of like a lot of really cool stuff and ideas. So yeah, we essentially created this system we called it In-Engine Plus. So essentially we worked on in-game cinematics, and we worked on launch trailers, all rendered in Unreal. This was like Unreal 3 at the time.
And this is back, Unreal 3.
Yeah. So this was back in, man, I don't even know, like 2000, what, like 10? 8, something. I can't even remember. So we worked on Borderlands 2. We worked on Hawken, which is a great collab. We worked on Batman Arkham Origins. Like, we did a lot of their in-game cinematics and kind of things there. And essentially what we would do is do all this stuff in Unreal and essentially like run Unreal to the max. So we were like redlining Unreal as much as we could with the X amount of lights. And like, we knew what we were getting ourselves into, but like that, like, a character and or objects only have like 2 to 3 lights per, cast shadow. So we had to do a lot of workarounds and create and kind of use the film side of stuff of like creating plates, creating, different IDs. So creating our own Z depth. So the compers can always go in there and be like, cool, I have a certain, depth frame here. I have certain plates for this. And they were essentially able to kind of treat it as film, right? So we would render out all these plates in Unreal. So if it's your back plate, your characters, etc., so they can light them, they can, tone map them as much as possible, to make it look as good as possible, but still be in the game. You know what I mean? Which is really, really cool. It'd still be a video at the end of the day. It'll still be, pre-rendered, but we weren't doing like full on render farms and, crazy, situations where we needed to do really high poly work. We could just use the in-game assets to really, get time on our side to do some really cool stuff and still make it feel like it was part of the game, right? It wasn't just a cutscene, if you would.
Yeah. Yeah. Just cinematics and games in general, like what you're saying is so magical, because that's always sticks in my mind. It's like, I've always wanted to work on a cinematic. I've never had a chance to do a cinematic. But it's just, there's the film cinematic, whatever, but it's just, there's this different style and emotion when it's a cutscene or a trailer for
or a launch trailer.
Yeah, launch trailers, exactly. Like for I can remember just when I was studying back at Noman, always just falling in love with all the Blur Studio cinematics and the Blizzard cinematics. Like, man, I was always just like, how are they doing that? How are they so skilled?
Exact same thing. And no, man,
more so than like looking at a film, which is weird. It's like, because it feels just more artistic, like it's just more otherworldly.
And that is one of the things,
even though it looks fake.
Yeah. Well, even then, that's one of the things that we can kind of get into, right? It's just like game centric versus cinematic centric, right? Which is like, in games, you have a lot of restrictions, you have a lot of optimizations that you need to think about. But with, cinematics, films and stuff like that, what's really cool about it is that you do get to have that artistic ability to essentially gold brick everything you want, right? Which is just put in as much detail as you want per camera, right? You don't have to build things in a way where it's like, oh, the player is going to see this from all different angles. You're literally set dressing. You are faking a lot of stuff to camera, which is amazing, because then you can essentially do the best work you possibly can, and have great compositions and great lighting. That's all faked, right? Like, we fake everything. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think they both have their very interesting kind of pros and cons.
Yeah, it's a other world that it would be cool to touch one day.
It's awesome. Yeah. And then after Digital Domain, I got the opportunity. Jerry, my director, we worked really well together, and he had me, I was very fortunate to be part of his like A team, if you would. And he essentially, we went to Riot Games and kind of pitched the idea of what we were doing at Digital Domain to essentially create, high-end apples-to-apples cinematics with like, Blur, Digic, Goodbye Kansas, etc. To see, hey, can we make these cinematics, the big triangle that people want, right? Which is fast, cheap, and good, right? So you usually can't have all three. So we were trying our hardest to get all three as much as possible using Unreal at the time. And this is, to my knowledge, no one was really doing this at the time. And we were using Unreal to essentially recreate Blur cinematics to create all new different art styles and stuff like that. So we were exploring with many different art styles, and if like it's the Arcane art style, if it's like the Spider-Verse art style, things like that. Like, I felt like we were on the forefront of some pretty cool stuff before these things became very common. And yeah, sadly, the way the industry goes, there's like 6 years worth of work that I can't ever show. But we made some really cool stuff. And I thought we did some great things where, just talking about faking, like we just had to fake everything, right? And to get paint strokes to look a certain way, to let lighting be the paintbrush, to, do your textures a certain way, to painting normals, things like that, like stuff that's, again, becoming way more common nowadays. We were doing way back in the day, you know what I mean? And trying to pitch, the most important thing was create that timeless style that, like, Arcane now has, and, Spider-Verse and stuff like that. Cause I feel we used to talk about it all the time, but like, Don Bluth or Disney, where, you can watch Bambi 1943, back then, or you can watch it now. It's still going to retain its kind of timeless style. It doesn't matter about the story and stuff. And we're talking purely artistically here, right? Or even something like, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, you can play it now and it just is a kind of timeless style because of what they're utilizing and how it's kind of approached, versus something that's like hyper realistic that could potentially age poorly, right? Think of like your Beowulfs or your like Midnight Express. No, sorry, not Midnight Express. The Polar Express, and things like that, right? Where it's like you look at them now, and it's like at the time, it's like mind blowing 3D, and then you look at it now, and just kind of like ages poorly. And same thing goes with cinematics, right? You can look at some earlier like Blur stuff, Digic, or Blizzard stuff, and it's just kind of like, it's good, but I remember it being way better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So your stuff was like more stylized. Is that what you're saying?
We were very stylized. Yeah. And then
anything stylized can definitely hold its own. Its own.
Yeah. But even then, I feel like there is certain stylizations that could age poorly as well. Okay. You know what I mean? But for the most part, I feel like stylized is way more forgiving with age, in my opinion.
Well, it's gonna be weird. Like several years from now, we're gonna look back at all the crazy VFX now, how real it looks, and they'll be like, "Oh God, that looks terrible."
Yeah. No, sure. Yeah. Like it's the ebb and flow of style and stuff like that. And I
mean, think about Zelda, for instance, the Ocarina of Time. I could have sworn that was the most photorealistic thing I've ever seen as a child. And now I look at it and it's just like, what?
It all has to do with comparison, right? Of like, because it was the same thing. So like, I just played like the Oblivion remake, right? And it's one of those things where like, a thing that I found very interesting was that this is the way I remember it in my head, like the way it looks now, which is like the remaster is beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, right? You have all this brand new tech and stuff that's like really up-resing everything. It's a one-to-one pretty much remake, which is great. That's what people want. But that being said, like it's really weird playing it back when it came out and remembering it looking like the remake, in the sense of like how good it looked in my brain, right? But you go back to what it actually looked like, and you're like, whoa, this is, But again, it's all because of comparison and the time.
That's funny. I want to go back to what you mentioned briefly, was that you couldn't show your work of like 3 years, and there was a post yesterday,
like 6 years.
So there was a post saying that the studio shut down. The game closed, and it's like they're saying there's 3 or 5 years worth of work that they are not allowed to show ever, and that's just so like. It's really how sad. Do you? And this really is this to your point of, in order to move on to other studios. Let's say you got laid off. Well, I guess that's what happens, that they left and now they have no demo reel. You'd have to rely on your relationships. It's the only way.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things where maybe the ex person that you worked with at that studio that maybe had the massive layoff or the closure or whatever, got a gig at, a different studio. And they're like, actually the team, like what we were working on here, this is the team that was doing it. Right. Or this is like people that I would love to work with. Right. Cause I feel like for the most part, a lot of people have pull, right? There's also people who can leave a studio and bring a lot of people with them. You know what I mean? Not in the sense of like, illegally being like, hey, we're all going to the studio. It's more of just kind of like, fuck, I really miss working with that person, or I really miss working with this artist or whatever, right? There's just like there's like this orbit that kind of happens to certain people and certain teams where like people like to kind of go together, because it does take a lot of time to jive with teammates, in the sense of like, oh, we work really well together. I would love to work with that person. Or us as a team, we were able to achieve some really cool stuff, and we all kind of start mind melding and like able to really figure out like workflows and how we work with each other, of like, hey, this concept artist kind of gets me and gets the way I kind of process 3D information. I work really well with them. I would love to continue to work with them if that's on this project, that studio, whatever, right? And it's it's a really interesting kind of ebb and flow that happens. So to me, it's I think it's very dangerous that again, game dev in the entertainment industry isn't run on sunshine and rainbows. It's financial, it's tough, and these things happen. I can see the objective side of that, but the emotional side is still very it's raw. It's you get really angry, you get really depressed, you get all of the above, that like buddies that you've worked with that you never thought would get let go or fired because they're just like unicorn status, game dev or filmmakers or whatever. And you're just like, how the hell did that person get let go? That's crazy. Why would a studio ever let that person go? It's
from
really
my
weird,
understanding,
man.
What's going on now is that it's just it's an MBA guy crunching data numbers and looking at a spreadsheet.
Absolutely.
And as simple as that.
Yeah,
It
I
has
don't.
nothing to do with performance. They don't. They're just trying to pump. Well, it depends on what kind of studio it is, also. So if it's
Absolutely.
like an
This is
IPO
yeah.
studio that has stock, then they're just thinking about stock, and they, yeah, I can,
Yeah,
man,
and
I can
it sucks.
still,
Well, it just sucks that it's people on the ground floor that always get, fucked over, right?
yeah,
Sadly,
yeah.
it's never usually a situation where CEOs can take pay cuts, or this can
Yeah.
happen, or this can happen, or it. And
And they
again,
have
it's
zero clue how to make games. Zero,
absolutely no,
zero. They're there
exactly,
just to pump up the stocks, and they're making these decisions, blaming it on the artists.
yeah,
It
and
has nothing to do with them.
but again, that's what sucks, man. Like on my emotional side, I can say a lot of shit about this, right? But on the objective financial side of like where we are as a society
Mm-hmm.
and how important money is to certain folks or certain things, it makes sense. It just sucks. I
Yeah.
don't agree with it, but it makes sense. And it's a situation where it's just it's a real bummer. And I think because of that, we're also now getting a lot of stuff that is just not as I kind of want to choose my words carefully here. Just a lot of games, films, things like that that aren't super inspiring.
Yes. Well,
You know
that's
what I mean?
basically,
There's
yeah.
a
It's
and
less
that's
risk
and
taking.
that is a spectrum, right? There are a
Yeah.
ton of
Yeah.
great games that are coming out that are
Mm-hmm.
amazing and really moving the needle and stuff like that. I'm talking about more of like if we go to like stocked based studios and things like that,
Yeah.
usually they'll stay a lot safer with their
Yeah.
decisions and what they're making versus
Yeah.
taking risks and actually making games or films that are
Mm-hmm.
could be
I
potentially
just,
very impactful or generational.
yeah. I just hope that the artists getting laid off aren't taking it personally. It
It's
literally
hard
has
not to.
nothing,
Yeah,
nothing to
it's
do
hard.
with
It's
them.
yeah, exactly. It's hard not to, and it looks if you kind of feel tainted, and I think this kind of goes back to really fostering those friendships and fostering those situations where you can talk to people and show people what you can do at a studio or what you bring to the table, if you would,
Mm-hmm.
or just even being a good person who's good at their job, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those situations I feel like you could take it very personally. You can take it very like, oh, my imposter syndrome says that I fucking suck at my job because I've been laid off, right? Or because I've been fired, or because of this, or because of redundancies.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a really, really hard mindset to get yourself out of, right?
Yeah.
It sucks.
Well, it's weird when you already have experience and then that
Yes.
pops in and it just becomes stronger and stronger as you become more aware of your deficiencies.
Yeah.
Even though they probably aren't deficiencies in other people's minds.
Absolutely.
They're
No.
probably like, what are you talking about? You got no issues.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
No, 100%, right? And it is, again, very, very, very difficult to get past that initial state of like, especially when it's fresh, to be like, I suck at my job and that's why I got fired and that's why of this. But if you look at yourself objectively, right? One of the things I talk about with like students and stuff like that all the time is like, talk to yourself the way you would talk to your best friend. You know what I mean? I think it's really easy to kind of spiral into like negativity of like, especially as artists or as people who work in this kind of industry, to be like, I suck at this, or I am, bad because I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z, because I'm comparing myself to this person who has like 30 years experience in the game industry, or this person who has this amount or has a certain style, whatever, right? Like the comparison is always going to be detrimental to you, in my opinion. It's great to like have like ambitions and stuff like that, but I think it's like comparing yourself directly to people and being like, oh, I'm not good for the industry because I'm not at that level, or because I'm not that person, or because I don't know X
Yeah.
amount of people. But yeah, I guess what I was trying to say earlier is the fact that like, you just can't take it personally unless it's actually due to performance or whatever, right? That's a
Yeah.
different thing. And then hopefully you're self-aware enough to be like, okay, cool, I need to work on this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, just talk to yourself the way you would a best friend, right? Is like,
good
how
advice.
do you, yeah, how do you hype yourself up if you were talking about, a buddy that who genuinely does like good work, who's a good person, or this, and you're like, fuck, you know what? I am pretty good at lighting. I am pretty good at, materials. Or actually, I've never been let go because of performance. I've been let go because the studio failed, or because financial situations or this or that, right? Like
Yeah.
there's always you can always have a positive spin to it, in my opinion. And I think that's the thing that's always helped me kind of get over that imposter syndrome slash like, oh, I feel like I'm not good enough to be in this industry or any industry or things like that. I think it's really, really important to stay on that positive side of like, just, tell yourself like, you know what? I've never been fired due to X.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good. Or it's weird, but I feel like it works. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's days where I feel pretty down and out, and that usually helps.
Well, talking about you getting into the industry and stuff like that.
Sorry, I'm babbling a ton too. If we need to refocus,
No,
just
man,
let me
keep
know.
on going. So for portfolios in general, what would you recommend people to have, especially juniors or students, people? Because right now it's really crazy to break in.
It's incredibly
just crazy.
difficult. It's incredibly difficult.
So what do you suggest that they, especially for games?
For games, reach out to people. Like if we're talking like, this is like not even the portfolio side, but like if we're talking about just personalities and stuff like that, I have a bunch of people reach out to me, or it's just like a cold LinkedIn message of like, hey, I see that you work at this studio. I'm a student and I'm super curious about like how to break in, or I love your work, or hey, could you, if you have some time, can you look at my portfolio and give me some advice? Things like that. That's, I think, really, really important. I think people are really shy to reach out to artists, to reach out to people who work at a studio that they want to work at, or anything along those lines. Reach out. At the end, like the worst thing that could happen is that people don't see the message or they don't reply to your message, and nothing has changed than if you didn't reach out. You know what I mean? But if you reach out, we have a conversation, etc., I'll remember you. I'll remember your portfolio. I'll remember this stuff, right? And the next time we have a junior opening, or the next time we have a senior, whatever it is, that's kind of at the forefront. Or I'll get, lucky enough that I'll get like job offers for a lot of places, and I really enjoy where I'm working at and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey, I'm not available for this, but this person is, or they're a junior, or this or this. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I recommend them because their work is solid, and we've had great conversations so far. You know what I mean?
It's funny. This is really good advice. And I think back to the time when I was breaking in, and I was totally just reaching out to people. Like, I remember like people that I admired. I was like, hey, well, and David Long was like my first interview I had here. I remember reaching out to him because I was looking at his I had watched
all the
DVD
Blizzard
or
stuff,
something, and all this, and he got me my first little concept job.
That's
like,
awesome. No, that's great.
So yeah, reaching out, like, who cares? Like,
honestly,
especially if you're talented, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's the thing, man, too, is like, there's so much work out there nowadays. You know what I mean? There's so many platforms like Atmo, ArtStation, a bunch, LinkedIn, whatever, right? That hold these portfolios, and you have to, there's a ton of people out there making great work, and it's hard to, be like, oh, that person, let's hire that person, let's do this, right? Or, maybe I've never even seen your work and it's amazing. You know what I mean? You're like a junior artist or something like that. So just making yourself available
nowadays.
Oh, it's well, that's what's pretty amazing, man. Like, back when we were starting, there was no information. There was nothing, right? There was a couple forums here and there, but people would really keep that to themselves, like how they modeled something, how they lit something. Like, it would be something that you would really have to like teach yourself, and just kind of go to more like, film centric books or film centric, websites and stuff like that. Before, there was like 1,000 tutorials to do absolutely everything. Now it's pretty awesome that you can just essentially YouTube or Google, how do I do X? And there's probably someone who's made a tutorial or like a YouTube short or TikTok or something, right? It's so like the plethora of information is insane.
Yeah, it's the double-edged sword though. It's like, it's become so much more saturated. So the competition is a lot higher, where I think we have a lot of technical artists that are technically savvy. The longest and the hardest thing to develop is your eye.
Absolutely.
And I feel a lot of people aren't putting the time into doing that, unless they're doing concept. Like that's the whole point is to
Yeah,
develop your
absolutely.
eye. But I'll see a lot of environments that are very technically savvy. It's like, wow, you probably know a lot more stuff than I do, but can you take very basic shapes, lighting, and still make it look interesting?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with Atmo, is to try to show people, because like the black and white values, how you can see the values on the images.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can use that. I have a video talking about how to like break down those things to try to train your eye, and I just want to try to push that into the community, as to how to become a better artist, not a technician. That just comes with it.
But, yeah, that comes with experience.
Yeah. So
yeah, and that kind of goes back to working with really good people who can teach you, right? It's like you should be constantly learning and talk. That's some good advice I can give as well, I guess, is just like talk to different professions, talk to different people, right? Like in the sense of like, what does a film lighter do that's now you can do digitally, right? If that's a 3-point setup, if that's like just learning the basics of lighting, of materials, of how things interact. Like you don't have to go into like the nitty gritty of the science behind, how many lux is this, how many things. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's great information to kind of deep dive into if you're interested in it. Because then you can, especially with everything moving into like physically based rendering and like, other PBR materials, things like that. That stuff is pretty crucial to know how surfaces react. But at the end of the day, as much as PBR is a standardization or like a rule set of like the sun works like this, your eye works like this, a camera shutter works like this. At the end of the day, things need to be art directed, and that's where the eye comes in, right? Because as much as like this could be PBR correct and everything is the right values and stuff, it could still be that like, hey, this gold, even though it's correct, just doesn't look the way I want it to. And that's where the art direction comes in, right? If you have to break PBR, that's totally okay. Because at the end of the day, it's your output that is the most important thing. It's not the process of how you got it to be so technically correct and this and this. And that's a great standardization. But to lock yourself in a box of like, it's technically correct, therefore it's correct. It's like, yeah, but it still looks like shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
well, that's what I would do with on my end, because I do the 2D matte paintings, where
you gotta
I just get this. Yeah, I get this render and it's like, it's not perfect. I just go and paint on top, or just do something else to try to fake it or cover it. Like it's just, don't get so caught on one thing, because there are adjustments.
Don't put yourself in a box, right? Like if it doesn't look good, then change it. At the end of the day, it's whatever the final output is, right? Like who cares?
How do you handle the whole, let's say, the work-life balance of everything?
That took me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's pretty much it.
No. That took me a very long time. As you can see, I'm a big dude. I've lost my hair. These are all like residual of like just stress, man. It's a lot.
Hey, man,
of
you got a beautiful mustache.
Oh, thank you. No, but in all seriousness, it took me a very, very, very long time, and I'm still working really hard to make sure that my work-life balance is, good. Because again, I think that's with the ebb and flow of this industry, you have to continuously learn, right? It's not like a regular job, right, where you can just kind of clock off after work and just kind of live your own life. You usually have to do personal projects. You have to learn the latest and greatest, if it's a new program coming out, if it's this thing, if it's that thing, just to stay relevant. Not even to like be the best or whatever, but just to stay like at a baseline relevance to the industry, right? And there's pros and cons to that. Like I'm very fortunate enough that I enjoy doing that as a hobby as well. Like I love working on personal projects, or I love learning, new lighting techniques or new material techniques, or, how are people building environments nowadays with like procedural stuff. And, like I personally love doing that, but also at the same time, I don't want to spend my life in front of a computer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it is one of those things where I look to my wife a lot. So she's an animation director, like animation supervisor. And she does like not in a bad way, but like she does like no work outside of work. and it's amazing. But all of the work that she does is all adjacent to animation. So all the hobbies and all the personal projects that she does has nothing to do with 3D, because she works in 3D animation. None of it has to do with 3D animation, which is really, really cool. So for me, I'm trying to take that a little bit more where it's like, cool, if I'm doing environment stuff, I'm going to try to go on hikes more often to see how the world blends into each other. I'm going to try to go and look at materials and how they work. You know, if that's going to museums, if that's going to, you know, things like that, and get more inspiration outside of work that's like adjacent to what I do. Or if it's like sculpting and like physical sculpting, if it's, you know, pottery, whatever. There's stuff that I feel like I can do that's adjacent to my work, but it's not a direct correlation to like, oh, I'm making a 3D asset or I'm making a 3D thing. So I feel like that's a good way to kind of ease yourself into work-life balance of like, cool, I'm now doing, you know, art adjacent stuff that's still going to help me, but also I'm not sitting in front of a computer, like essentially redoing my job day and night.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's been tough. It's a thing that I've struggled with for a long time. I can, you know, spend hours and hours and hours in front of a computer and working on the project or whatever, but also at the same time, like I need, you know, the whole like go touch grass kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
you need to
I
like
think a
rip
lot of
yourself away.
artists, I think a lot of them are in need of touching grass. You could you can sense it just from talking with them.
Absolutely.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, man, you gotta there's reality in life out there, man. Just
And
get
also,
off
absolutely.
the computer. You know, you can relax, but yeah,
And
it's
also, I feel like making anything your single personality is pretty detrimental for you socially. You know what I mean?
well,
Making any
that's
single thing a personality trait, I think, is really bad. If that's art, if that's this or that, you know, if you make a single thing your personality, I feel like it's really hard to get along with people.
That's 100% accurate, because it's even bad in sports. So I used to be
Absolutely. Yeah.
serious.
And
I
this
used to
isn't
be
anything.
serious
Yeah.
in tennis, and totally like tennis. Like when you make your sport your identity, like I
Mm-hmm.
am this athlete, I am that. Like it actually makes you a worse athlete, because psychologically and performance wise, you get put added stress, because this is you. Every time you mess up, it's like, this is you. You are instead of just like, you know, this is what I do. This is fun.
Yeah. And I think
And
that
you
kind of
lose the
goes.
fun and enjoyment. It goes with,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's with everything.
Yeah. If that's music, if like, you know, I play bass, I play synth, I play, you know, I love music, but I don't try to make that like my only thing that I talk about. Or I love doing, you know, game art and stuff, but that's not the only thing I talk about.
Yeah.
Video games, etc. Right? Like have some diversity in your interest and what you do day to day, and I feel like that will help you. One, just be more approachable, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, not, I wouldn't say better person or anything like that, but like it is one of those
Just a
things
more
where like
well-rounded person.
well-rounded. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just
there's no reason to.
a more cultured guy.
Mhm. So kind of going with the work-life balance is like, it is really good to, yeah, work on your personal projects or whatever to stay relevant or to break into the industry, whatever. But also, you know, give yourself a break and go do something else and come back to, like, your personal project's always going to be there. It's going to be there as long as you want it to be there. But doing something just to get the likes or to post it online or to do this, and I think that's another very dangerous thing, is like the constant chase of getting likes or having your comparison of like, oh, I have to finish this project so people can know that I'm doing
Yeah.
artwork, or people know that I am this person, or that, because I've fallen into that trap, right, where I was like coming home from work and like working on stuff because I wanted to post it as fast as possible because I wanted people to like it,
Yeah.
for some arbitrary reason that I've set for myself. And it's a dangerous slope, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I get it when people are trying to get their name out because, you know, they're getting in the industry or they just want more money. And that becomes a big factor. And it's hard to find all that balance and to deal with life struggles and complications and everything. But
Absolutely.
you try your best.
Especially if your work is saying, oh, I want to, like, it's not good enough that you just do your job. I need you to do X, Y, and Z thing outside of work for you to get a pay bump, for you to get this, for you to get that. You know, I think that's a very dangerous thing as well.
Yeah. So what would be, let's say, your lowest point while working in the industry where you kind of felt like maybe I want to quit? Did you ever have that?
Oh, absolutely, man. Multiple times, honestly, multiple times. I would say I think it all kind of comes down to studio experience, studio maturity, and overall just time in this industry. There is a point in time where you have to be like, yo, this is not my studio. It's not my IP. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
I'm just working here or whatever, right? And you kind of get into that mindset.
I feel like that happens a lot with artists.
Yeah, man. And it's
just like, I'm just doing my work, and then you lose your artistic joy of being an artist.
Absolutely. And I think it's really dangerous because it's all situational, but there's certain studios that kind of operate in a way where it doesn't foster good creativity or doesn't foster good, decision making of like for artists or for the IP or for whatever. And it kind of like you start kind of losing that joy, and you kind of start becoming like, well, I guess it is what it is. That's just game dev, baby, that kind of thing, which sucks. And every scenario is different, but I would say for me, without calling out certain studios, there were it kind of always comes down to how things are managed. It's never like the people working on the ground floor or anything like that. It's usually just studio decisions, it's IP decisions and things like that end up kind of diminishing all the work, respect, and how people are treated within a studio or things like that. So there was a point in time, I would say, before joining Respawn, that I genuinely wanted to quit the industry. But again, I was in just a very low point as a person, things like that. But there was just like so much, I call it ear flick moments, right? Like just annoyances of like, someone flicking your ear, and it's like, okay, well, that happened. Or, oh, cool, I didn't get, even though I've done all this, I couldn't get the raise, or I couldn't do this, or you just kind of feel like you're kind of going around in circles and just not having a good time. And I feel like, you never want to get bogged down or anything, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, I thought about like, what if I was just a fucking barista or a mechanic or something where I can like turn off, because it got to the point where, I was told, hey, you have to have X amount of followers on ArtStation. You have to have X amount of followers. Dude, it was
no
weird.
way.
Yeah.
You were told that?
Yeah, it was
no
really,
fucking way. Environment artists don't get followers on ArtStation.
Exactly. No, it's weird. It was really, really bizarre. And
that's the whole point I started Atmo, was for environment artists, because we get no recognition.
Exactly. So it's just one of those things where like just weird, like arbitrary sets of rules of like, in order to get this, you need to do this. And it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth of like, well, what happened to just like me doing my work?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't that good enough? Like, why isn't it good enough that I just do my work and do good at my job and stuff like that? And everything else kind of comes with it. If that's like, wanting to do leadership stuff, if that's wanting to do mentorship, if that's wanting to do, more opportunity stuff, right? That all just kind of comes with it. But to be like, hey, you have to achieve these arbitrary rule sets in order to achieve this status or this or this or this. Yeah. I don't know. It hurts. And I think I still have that in the back of my head of like that time that was happening to a lot of people at the studio. And people just, dropped like flies. Everyone was just leaving. They're like, you can see the writing on the wall. You're like, cool, I'm going to go find another job.
Yeah.
Because this is the way this is being managed is just very poor.
Man, that's crazy. They shot themselves in the foot. That's for sure.
Absolutely. No, I think it's, certain places that I've worked at, I feel like could have been some very great contenders and great studios. It's purely how things were handled that made me very sad.
I think it comes down to MBAs.
Sure. Again, it's a spectrum, and like I want to be careful with what I'm saying and stuff like that. But yeah, it's I have my own opinions about stuff, but yeah, they're all opinions, and they're all, and for legal reasons, these are all my own opinions. This has nothing to do with, past or present studios. No. In all seriousness, though, like it's again, kind of to
Well, I
what I
mean,
was
we
saying
have to give
earlier.
the reality, you know, like you go in thinking everything's gonna be a dream and perfect and flawless. And I had tons of ups and downs and being abused at times and just like, and then eventually you find spots that are just awesome
Yeah,
and it's great.
good teams. Yeah,
And just, you know, just things just didn't work out for whatever reason kind of thing.
yeah.
Um, and
That's
I'm
how it felt at
always,
Respawn, to be honest.
yeah,
Like I
really?
really enjoyed everyone I worked with at Respawn. I really loved the way the production was handled. I love the way how things were. You know, I can say this for like the environment team
Yeah.
specifically. The environment team on Apex Legends for me was genuinely like the way things were run. It gave me that hope in the industry again. To be honest,
Yeah.
it kind of made me feel like, oh, this is how a studio is run. This is
Yeah.
how a regular production is kind of
Mm-hmm.
run. But again, that has to do also with the success of Apex Legends. That has to do with the success of Respawn, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a huge spectrum, right? Like I understand, like objectively, I understand why certain studios do certain things, but also at the same time, we're all human and we should be
Yeah.
treated as such. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, Respawn's, I mean, it's great. It was, yeah, pretty heartbroken with that whole situation.
I can imagine.
Like,
Yeah,
pretty,
no, and
pretty
I'm really sorry,
heartbroken,
man. I'm really
I
sorry.
gotta say.
I was
But
really sorry to hear that. It really sucks, man, that even a successful studio can have these situations, and it's a shame. It's really, really
yeah,
a shame.
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So we move on,
Mm-hmm.
and we keep on searching, like how this whole career is like for any, like, you know, young people trying to get in. I've been
Absolutely.
at many multiple studios, so just be aware, like, you know, going from studio to studio is the best thing anyway for increasing your rates. So
Absolutely.
look at it as a positive, you know, and you get to meet more people, especially if you're a single person or you have a partner that wants to go and travel with you and just explore the
Absolutely.
world. I was just talking with my wife about like, hey, do you want to go to, like, there's so many different studios and random ass spots like around the world. Do you want to go? He's like,
Yeah.
no, I want stability.
No,
Like,
and again,
okay, I get it.
all of those things are fair. Exactly. No,
Yeah.
'cause that's the thing I've never had in my life is stability, right? So when I'm able to like have some sort of stability where it's like a permanent contract or like, you know, staff position or anything like that, I will do my damnness until like things become, you know, just terrible. Then
Yeah.
I usually stay as loyal as possible at a studio, as long
Yeah.
as it's like the stability and stuff. Even if the pay isn't great, even if, you know, this is whatever, like just having that, to me personally, coming from a contract life, like Digital Domain was all contract, and the way it was handled was terrible, because it was like, no joke, like every 2 weeks I'd have a contract update. You know what I
Uh,
mean? To the point where it was like, am I going to have a job in 2 weeks? And like that went on for like 6 months.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I told myself, I'm like, man, I never want to do that again. So if I can ever find just and I've done a bunch of contract work as well at different studios.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's like anytime I'm able to be fortunate enough to have a permanent position, I try to, you know, latch onto that as much as possible, unless something comes that's, you know, that I'm really passionate about or I really want to work with, or a team, or anything like that.
Well, let's check out your work
Sure.
on Atmo. So let me share my screen and get out of
No worries.
this.
And again, sorry if I'm making this a little bit like, I guess it's just the situation at the moment. Things are a little bit weird in the sense of like just the industry in
Well, the
general. So
industry as a whole,
it's hard not to talk about it.
extremely important to talk about because,
Yeah.
like, my life is affected.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
everyone's lives are affected right now, and you're just seeing
Absolutely.
it everywhere, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
So hopefully when
a
things
crazy
get better,
time.
I can come back on this show and we can talk actual, like, you know, fun game dev moments and, you know, things
Well,
like
we're
that.
going to get into that. We're going to get into
Cool.
that when we
Okay.
go over your art. No, these are long podcasts.
Okay, perfect.
So
Perfect.
this is the whole point. This is just like the first half is about your, you know, life experience, and then we're going to go into like your artwork and talk about the technical stuff and how you did all this stuff. And
Awesome.
get all jazzed, get all nerdy and
Yeah, let's
jazzed
do
over
it.
some
Yeah.
stuff.
The thing about making your whole thing a personality, right? Like a single thing of personality. Let's get into it. Let's do it.
All right. So this is the Atmo site at atmovfx.com. It originally started out focusing on just environment art, everything environment art. So you have the different categories like traditional painting and matte painting and games and photography, concepts, skyboxes, lighting, all related to environments. And then eventually I started expanding it for FX and character creatures up here. So like if you were to go to the character creatures, you could see it all being organized over here, where I felt like ArtStation was very just unorganized. It was just a clusterfuck to find anything. So yeah, that black and white button I mentioned before, you can check out the values of everything. Yeah, awesome. I think it's extremely important to understand values to really see how you're controlling the eye around the picture and having things work in space. Yeah, so we can pop them up and shuffle through, click on them, zoom in, and everything. Some of them you can zoom in twice. And you gave me some suggestions before to maybe help things out. But it's a work in progress on the site. And it's costing.
Absolutely.
So everyone, like there's a donate button up here, listeners. It would be great if you guys could help me out and just support Atmo. It's a project, and hopefully it will take off. And I want to add so many more features like custom layouts on your portfolio page. I want a marketplace where it's all organized as well. Because the thing about this site is that how you have to apply. You're giving yourself a experience level. So you have the seniors work and mid artist work and mid and all that stuff, junior, senior, organized. So for recruiters, they can find exactly who they want very quickly. The senior, the only one that has to go through an approval process is the senior artist. So it's not some junior saying they're a senior. So when you actually click on the senior button, you'll see it will filter through just the senior quality level stuff. And then there's also the open to feedback. So if you are working on stuff, I want this to be an open community for people to ask questions. You can also check out the Discord, which you can always click on that button and share your work over there. But on here, you can click the open to feedback, filter it through that, and you'll know that this person wants stronger feedback on their work. And yeah, so
that's awesome.
There's even a markup on the comments. So if I was to do, let's click on comment with drawing, you can.
That's killer. That's genuinely really, really cool.
So you can say like, this is really good or not,
Sure.
Yeah. So I was trying to make it where it's, it's open. And that's another thing is that, the feedback that you get, if a senior comments, you'll have a blue check mark by your name. So then when you see the comments, it's like, okay, this is like sound advice.
Yeah, it could be sound advice. It could be very constructive, or it could be, subjective, whatever. So that's awesome. Yeah. That's great. And I love the option of being like open to it, or what, this is done. I'm not going to touch this ever again. Like, it is what it is. But yeah, I think the open for feedback is awesome regardless.
And you can see it here with the open to feedback.
That's awesome.
That's what will show up over there. I guess it would just be word of mouth. I'm not really sure how to really.
It's tough, and I've never done anything like this. I've never, tried to make a.
Well, I'm just saying, like just to get the features out, to say like
absolutely,
Like I'm hoping that this is obvious. Like, hovering over and you see a pencil there, open to feedback. That's what I'm assuming. If people have suggestions on UI or layout of the website, give it to me. Hit me up on Discord or LinkedIn or whatever. So let's get into your page over here, and this is your profile. See, you got your little blue check mark there. And you have it organized as these thumbnails, and I'm going to get rid of this so we can have more.
That'd be awesome to just have like the everything on one page.
Yeah, everything on one page. I just haven't had this many artworks, so I didn't know it went that far. So let's check it out. Is there any specific one you want to check out? I love these. These are so adorable.
Oh yeah. So again, it's kind of talking to like work-life balance stuff, just to kind of keep, these are it's a great Discord that does these yearly Rocky New Year challenges. And what's it called? It's really, really awesome that they've I really like doing this. It's the club Discord, and it's a again, another community of artists and stuff like that. But this was a great kind of challenge. So all of these rocks and all of these kind of like things that I've made are all 1 hour sketches essentially. So the same way you would do kind of like a, what's it called? Like mermaid, mermaid, I guess, or even, Inktober. It's the same kind of thing, but in July for rocks. So for me, the simple thing is like, make a rock in an hour. That's it, right? But I really love to put as much personality or as themes or things like that as I can. I just have fun with it, and I think that's really really nice. It's like this is kind of how you get like the creative juices flowing, or it's kind of like cloud gazing. It's like, oh, I see a dragon. It's like, so yeah, it's like, cool, I made this into a troll, I made this into a hot dog, I made this whatever, right? Like, and it's just
face.
Hi. And it's just fun. Like this is honestly just personal work that I found just very very fun, and I 3D printed a couple of these things and
that's
things
cool.
like that. So it's been these are just very fun. So this is like one of the first sets that I made, and if you go to the other ones, there's more sets, and like I kind of like every year kind of did like a theme and stuff. So so like Saturday evening essentials, you know what I mean? That's just like this the same thing as like Saturday evening post, right? But like these were things that I felt were like, oh, this is a cool thing that I like, right? Where I like on Saturdays, I like to play my synths. I like to, grab a coffee. Okay. I like to, do stuff like that. So yeah, these are purely personal and just, they're not perfect, but they're finished. Like that was the main thing is like, can I do this in an hour? Right.
Okay.
That's kind of the main thing for these guys.
Can you imagine being able to, print them all out in bronze or cast them in bronze, fun. and you just have them laid out in your room somewhere? Or
I would love to do that. So that's like another thing that would
make
be
them
like
giant.
Really cool. Yeah, like that would be a cool thing. That's like artwork like art adjacent.
This could be at and this could be at the gallery. It could become physical.
Sure. Print them out, or even just on my desk. You know what I mean? just fun at my desk. But yeah, these are just like little personal projects and stuff like that. So again, these are just 1 hour sculpts, and I love horror movies, so I'm like, cool, a fun little VHS of, And again,
well, you hear about that these new like boo boos or bobos, whatever dolls, like little stuffed animal things.
Thing?
Yeah, they're going viral, hit crazy viral. Yeah. And like the guy made like $1 billion in like one day or something.
I'm sure. Yeah, like it's funny whatever latches on, right? Like you could make
so like these little guys could maybe become some viral little
who knows
keychain thing. Who knows?
We'll see. And like for the other stuff, it's primarily always been commercial work, right? So this is like some of the few things that I do personal, but same thing with like materials. There's a lot of materials that I like to make. I really enjoy the process of being in substance designer and just having non-destructive workflows to make cool things. And it's I think of it a lot as like sketching. Where essentially I'm able to just play around with shapes, play around with colors and things like that. If you go to like the third page or something, you'll see like more of my personal materials. But these are all just materials that I enjoy doing, and I've never been much of a 2D sketcher or anything like that. I really enjoy it, but for the most part, I really like to just sketch in a 3D space, if that's sculpting, if that's substance designer and stuff like that, just to kind of these are also done within like an hour, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And they're just quick kind of sketches of, hey, can I make sand? Hey, can I make snow? Can I make rocks? Can I make a cool tile? Can I make a rune generator, right? Like how deep can I go? And I find this stuff just super fascinating and fun for me to make. So it's kind of cathartic for me to make like materials, just because one, I'm working on my craft, but also two, I find it just really fun.
Feeling hot.
Yeah, and that's I for a lot of my graphs and stuff like that, I'll just put stupid shit on there.
So what do you use to learn substance designer? This looking at this, people could be, intimidated and everything.
Oh, absolutely. The way to think about it too is also just kind of like think of the nodes as like almost like Photoshop layers as well. It's the same kind of
Hmm.
principles for a lot of this stuff, but is a lot more possibilities with it. But like we were talking about earlier, there's so many great resources out there for beginners to experts. Javier Perez, Daniel Tiger, a bunch of great artists who have put their learnings out there in the world. Because the nice thing about substance designer and a lot of different artworks is that there's 1,000 ways to make a rock, right? There's no like one method that's like this is the best method to make a rock shape or to make sand or to make this. So it's really really cool to kind of you can watch those tutorials, you can watch those kind of things, and then just play around with it. That's the best advice I can give is just have fun and break stuff. Press buttons, see what things do. What does that node do? What does this node do? That's how I've learned a lot of this stuff is like literally just doing. You know what I mean? That's what I have a lot of fun exploring and not just following a tutorial to a T or, get from when it comes to tutorials, I really recommend like follow it, learn it, but also make sure that you're actually paying attention to what's happening, not just blindly following. Oh, I've put this node in front of this node in front of this node. Like understand, like pause the video, understand what that node is doing. And I think that's going to be way more beneficial than just kind of copying a tutorial or a graph or something like that,
Hmm. Would you say that having substance designer would be in it a mandatory thing to have on your reel, especially as
No,
like a student or something?
no, I think for me, it's more of like what you want to do, right?
Hmm.
As far as an environment artist goes, this is getting a little bit more and more standardized, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Learning substance designer and stuff like that, and substance painter, it's becoming more of a standardization. But like, there's many many different avenues within environment art, right? There's different like forks that happen. So there's people who are great at modeling, there's people who are great at lighting, there's people who are great at this, you know what I mean? There's so much to do. But definitely substance designer is one of those things where if you want to get into material work and stuff like that, then yes. If I mean, it's only going to help, right? Like
Hmm.
learning this stuff. Is it mandatory? No, but depending on what kind of avenue you want to go to, I would say if you're working on materials and stuff, then yes, right?
Yep.
But there's different styles of materials as well, right? There's like technical materials like within Unreal or other, programs where it's like
Hmm.
cool, it's completely different, but to understand how a shader works, how materials, how textures work is always going to be beneficial.
Hmm. So I remember you working on this,
Mhm.
and it was a modular set, right?
Yeah.
And would you say that having modular, because I keep hearing that with the games, I
Mhm.
wasn't a game environment artist.
Sure.
So like having a modular piece or pieces, whatever, to show that you understand that concept would probably be one of the most important things.
I would say so, yes. Because the thing about environments, especially for games, kind of going back to what we were talking about, being film centric or game centric. With games, you have a lot of optimizations that need to happen, especially on something like Apex Legends, where you have a ton of different people running around. You have a ton of different lighting scenarios. You have a ton like big open environments, things that are not getting cold at distances that need to be as optimized as possible. So modularity is very very important because essentially the way to think about it is that you make a single asset and reuse that asset. The computer for the most part sees it as a single asset and not like
Yeah.
3 4 5 1,000 different assets, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing with like think of grass, right? It's usually the same kind of grass mesh that gets populated and instanced thousands and millions of times, right? And it's much more performant than having every single blade of grass be its own asset, right? So
Yeah.
it's the same kind of principle with buildings and things like that, other than of course this is given the example that like you're going to have the same kind of buildings or different structures that can be made. You have to be very smart on how you create modular assets, right? Um, if it's like, cool, we know that we're going to be using these round shapes for a lot of the stuff. We know we want to make these hallways. So making different lengths of the hallways and making sure that they work from building to building. It's really, really difficult. But the best way to do it and the best scenario to do it is to do it like prototypes with primitive shapes and get those. It's really important to get those measurements correct, right? Because you can always art it up. But so we were lucky enough to have awesome level designers who made a lot of these primitive shapes that, hey, this connects to this and this makes this shape and this connects to this and makes this shape. And then it's up to me to kind of art it up. But there are a lot of things that we need to think about when it comes to how things connect to each other and how things get utilized. So making sure that the windows are all the same exact dimensions so we can use the same window frame on multiple different buildings. You know what I mean? So there's stuff like that that needs to happen. So with games, there's a ton of optimizations that need to happen. So you have to be very, very forward thinking in how you go building buildings and or assets for your video game. If that's also, you know, as simple as it can be as modular as like, oh, I made a wall and that wall then creates a room that can be utilized in a bunch of different ways. Like this wall has a window, this wall has a this, and it can get pretty modular that way, or it can be more bespoke, right? Where it's only using a couple of modular assets to create a thing if you want very specific shapes.
So what was the assignment on this one specifically? Like what was your thought process?
So the thought process on this really, really difficult because things, again, with games as well, things have ebb and flows of like, actually these designs did work, these didn't work, etc. So you have to kind of make changes on the fly as well. And you have to kind of think modularity of like, actually, we're no longer using this building shape. We're going to move over to this building shape because it's better for combat, right? Or it's better for this. So the thinking is purely like, cool, I have all these shapes. And kind of go back to, if things change on you, you kind of have to go back to the drawing board of like, okay, well, let me, instead of arting it up, let's make it, you know, a primitive version of it and go from there and essentially try to make sure that it works on a primitive scale before arting it up and spending the time to do that. So these kind of things will live as like kind of gray block meshes for a long time to make sure that it works for gameplay, especially for Apex. Things need to be pretty airtight for gameplay, or else, because again, that's the most important thing is that gameplay is first. And we'll have to do a lot of stuff even afterwards to be like, hey, this worked in concept, but it doesn't work on the gameplay side or things like that. So,
okay. And then when you're doing like the storytelling of the layouts, like were you given the concept of what the interior is going to be like, or did you have free range?
Yes and no. For a lot of stuff, it's kind of free range, and a lot of other stuff, it's like we want a very specific kind of set dress for this building, right? If it's like a research building, if it's a storage building, and things like that. But again, it all has to be gameplay first, right? So as much as I would love to add a bunch of stuff in the center here and like more set dressing pieces, like, you know, helmets on the floor or a bag or things have to be a certain scale, they have to be a certain way for the player to be able to traverse in the way that we want to. So we'll pack a bunch of stuff on the side, like corners of walls or like to the sides and things like that, but having the actual like viewpoints or like your line of sights be as clear as possible, because at the end of the day, this isn't a portfolio piece for how good it looks, it's a game, right? And it needs to play well, especially for a competitive shooter like Apex Legends. So you try to do as much storytelling as you can. If it's like all these kind of like NASA-esque decals everywhere, if it's these what's called like spacesuits or like hazmat suits here to the side, but again, their collision is flat, right? Because we don't want the player to get stuck. We don't want them to kind of clip their camera or anything like that. So you try to do as much as you can, especially with walkways and stuff. It's like trying to bring it to life where, hey, where's like the main areas here where people walk, right? And you kind of want to add decals like where it's dirtier in areas where people walk versus like dusty in areas where it's like there's storage and things haven't really moved. You kind of want to add in that storytelling when you're building these assets, because at the end of the day, this is just a cube, right, with another cube in the middle. That's all it is. So you just have to add a bunch of story yourself to really make it feel like something. And again, the player will maybe see this room for 3 seconds, if that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to really
through,
make sure, again, with performance and stuff, you can't add everything that you would want into here, right? It has to be very specific assets, very, very specific things. But you want to make sure that you're calling out the really, really important aspects of it, right? So like here, clearly the door and that lighting on the door is the most important feature there, right? Like I don't want you to hang out there at the bottom where it's like pretty dark because it's just a wall, right? I have set dress and stuff like that, but I don't want you as a player to spend a bunch of time there because it's just a wall. There's nothing there. But if you need to get out, it's very clear where the door is, where your kind of like areas of movement are, right? If it's to the right there, we have like a yellow grate where a player can climb up, or we have the stairs. So we have different options for players to move around and traverse. So that's also another thing that goes into storytelling is like, cool, we have to have these traversal moments. What can I put there that makes sense that a player will see, right? So like this yellow grate could be part of the storage, or it could be part of, something, but it also helps to, guide the player of like, go this way, or use this to traverse. Cause there's a lot of games where it's like, I don't want them to go up the wall to the left here. You know what I mean? Cause there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. It's like, you can't go through that window, etc. So you don't want to call a lot of attention to that area. Right.
Yeah. When you're building this stuff out, you start in Maya, or whatever 3D software. How far do you push it in that program before bringing it into the engine and then, duping and instancing stuff to save on performance?
So usually, again, because we're working with a team and we really want to get like the gameplay feedback and stuff like that, it will live pretty gray block for a while. You know what I mean? Until we get like, because we know what we want to make, but the most important thing is like, we will work on different aspects of those things. If it's trim sheets, if it's materials, if it's, things like that. But the overall shape and stuff will hopefully never change throughout the production, right? That's what you're hoping for, but these things happen. So there's no point in making a final product during early production, and spending that time to make it look as beautiful as possible if it has the potential to change and stuff, right? And speaking about optimization, this building here, so these things here, I would have loved to have added 1,000 more assets and 1,000 more things to really showcase set dressing and stuff like that. But because this map is so dense and has so much stuff in it for this particular map, we had to really strip away so much, right? Like I had a ton more set dressing in here. I had a ton more kind of storytelling elements. But again, you kind of have to go with the limitations of the game, right? And at the end of the day, if this is just a room where a player is going to, just come in, grab some loot and then leave, there is no point to add, the best looking things here if it's not needed, right? Because again, that's all performance. It's like the more you add, the more that the game's gonna, have a hard time, being stable at a certain frame rate or things like that. So when I look at these, on the artistic side, I'm like, man, we could have done such cooler stuff, or I could have done this, or I could have done that. You know what I mean? But also at the end of the day, it needs to be as performant as possible and as clear and concise to the player of what's happening here, right? You kind of have to think about it in a gray block state, right? Where it's like, if I'm a player, what am I looking for? What am I doing? Why am I in, like, how do I get in and out of this room for gameplay purposes? If I'm getting shot at by another player or something, So we don't want to like overwhelm the player with like a ton of set dressing and shit like that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But as an artist, I'm like,
I know.
I want to add more.
Well, it's going to be interesting in the future to see if players can actually handle the more detail in the rooms during quick first-person shooters like this, because the engines are just going to improve. Our hardware is just going to improve. So it'll be interesting if people get annoyed with more realistic stuff.
I think so. And I think that's why you have a lot of games art direction wise, especially if it's like first person shooters and stuff, where you'll have comparisons of like, oh, this game has so many details and so much grunge and blah, blah, blah. That's why I enjoy playing, you know, this other game, because everything is clear and concise and has, big swatches of color and shapes that I understand and then I can think about within a millisecond, right? Versus like, oh, this is the most realistic environment that I've ever been in, right?
Yeah, that seems to only be good for role playing or just regular games in general. And
Absolutely,
just
but not competitive shooters or competitive sports games, things like that, right? Where it's like there is a visual hierarchy that needs to be done in games like these to make sure that the player knows what's most important, right? If it's loot, if it's UI, if it's effects, if it's that. To me, like environments in general should be more tertiary, right? They should always feel like it's kind of like a good environment to me is like good animation. You shouldn't really notice it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless you want it to be noticed. So for me, it's like usually the only time people notice animation or notice environments or notice things like that when it's not being called out in a way that is like, hey, look at this thing, is usually when it's bad or has some uncanny valley, right? To me, like the uncanny valley just doesn't exist in characters. It exists in everything. And there's, certain rocks where you can make certain rocks and it looks like the uncanny valley, right? Where it's like, hey, that rock doesn't seem like it should belong there or there or there, right? Same thing goes with buildings or assets or lighting. You can make things just look real funky, that the player will notice if it's not done correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting that you're calling, because I've never really heard someone describe it as the uncanny valley for environments.
Yeah, and that goes with anything.
But yeah, it's true. It's you want them not to be able to just feel like, oh, something's off, but they don't know what it is. Like it just needs to feel right and cohesive.
Exactly,
and sticking out.
And when it comes to games, it needs to be a thing that I feel like I'm in this world. I don't want to think about this world because my only thing that I want to think about is getting my weapons, getting first place, shooting other people, you know what I mean, to win the game, right? I'm not here to look at the beautiful lighting, like not to say that like that's not a thing that people look for, but at the same time, it's like I would say the majority of people playing this honestly don't care the way the buildings look. They don't care about my material work. They don't care about the lighting. They don't, you know what I mean? But if it was wrong, then people would notice it.
Yeah, they would.
Right.
Yeah. And it would slow them down. And yeah.
So it's always this fine balance.
What you do in here, was it the building or was it the rows, this whole section?
Yeah, so primarily for these, I worked on the modular buildings for these as well. So again, these buildings are very modular, very, very, you can
so
see
which part? Is it the whole building
so
or
you
is
can
it sections?
See that, so the whole building and everything is modular for the most part. So this top part actually fits on top of the building to the left there, if you can see it. So we have different building sets because again, we have to think about optimizations, especially for this particular level. So I had to make very specific things where like you can't go up this building, right? So we have to make it feel like it's lived in, like, things like that. But we also don't want to call to the player and say, hey, you can go up to the 8th floor of this building, right? So we have to make it kind of like as, again, livable, but like in the space, but not call out to the player that like, oh, I can go there, I could go there. And this camera angle really doesn't make it, the player's never at this camera angle. They're always at ground level. But it is one of those things where like here, so like all these assets that are on the building are completely modular. The building top there is completely modular. These windows, things like that. So I can like place them in a way that makes sense to have them on, off, or completely gone. Again, this whole skyscraper part will go on the other building there to the left. So it fits perfectly on there. So it could essentially look like a completely different building, even though it has the same kind of, utility and stuff like that. So
that's cool. I like the windows where you can see the little shadows.
Yeah. So it's just,
bleeding through.
Fun little kind of things like that make it a little bit more believable that, things are happening in there.
And
And
that's just like
also,
a simple texture. And
yeah, it's just a simple, like,
yeah,
emissive
it's cool.
texture. And we also have to think about it like kind of the way Disney Imagineering does, where it's like at ground level, you want this to feel much more grand and much bigger. So our shapes and stuff are usually done in a way where they're tapered, or they're, in a certain way that will give the impression of like, oh, this is a grand skyscraper, or this is a grand thing, or this is, a medium-sized building. We have to model and see things in a certain way where it's like give the illusion that it's much
So
taller or much shorter.
You tapered this building?
Yeah, so the building is actually pretty tapered and stuff like that. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so it will give the illusion of, you don't want to do it to the extreme of like things look weird, but at ground level, you want to make sure that kind of, because if you go to Disneyland or Disney World or anything like that, and you walk down Main Street, you'll notice that the windows at the top are much bigger and things like that, or things are like tapered outward. And it's a cool illusion. So like when you're walking down the street, it feels like the buildings are much taller than they actually are, or they're,
Oh, so I
like
can see this angling out just a tiny bit.
Yeah, you can do some. Yeah,
is that what you're talking about? Like tapering it out wide as it gets higher?
Well, it's actually tapered inwards. I think it's just this camera. I think it's just this camera angle and stuff. But yeah. So again, it's just fun little tricks like that you kind of do without modeling.
So how are you doing that with the modular ability though? Like is because if each piece is supposed to fit in there, each piece has to have a slight little taper as well, or are you tapering the whole thing?
A bit of both. It's one of those things where you just kind of have to, like, the connection points are the most important, right? Everything else is kind of like, you can kind of have free range, especially in areas where the player will never be or never really go to.
Yeah. That's really cool. Let's see these roads, were you working at all on the environment?
Not in this particular area, but I did work on a lot of the set dressing and stuff in other areas. Okay. So yeah, but these are primarily showing the building sets that I made, like the modular building sets and stuff. Let's go to the next page. So like the one to the right there is a good example of So this one was really, really difficult. So this was a whole area that I was tasked with. So it's a whole POI, and we also had to use it for a cinematic. So I was working as fast as possible. I was pretty much the only one on this until later on. But essentially here is like, I had to build out this whole section that you see here. So everything that's like the two big warehouses and that big kind of center circular bit there in the bottom center. So I had to build out this whole area and make it look, as good as possible. So this was like start to finish, with concepts that were forever changing because we were doing, what's it called? A cinematic for it and stuff like that. We went from a non-destructed tower to a destructed tower to a destruction tower, things like that. So it was a tough one, but it was very, very fun. And then there's a gigantic rotating piece here that was really, really hard to get right because the shape is just so wonky. But yeah, you can continue going through some images if you want. Yeah, so again, this is all modular, right? So this building to the left is the same as the right, but also it's cut in fours, right? So the best way to describe it is like in the middle, it's cut in half, so it works in a mirrored sense because we can't mirror in this engine. So again, just being very particular in how things are set dressed and stuff like that. And again, needs to work for gameplay. But if you'll notice, a lot of like the grunge and those types of things are decals on top. So the building itself is pretty simple in the sense it's just like a white with a green kind of decal, if you would, or a green kind of tint. And then a lot of the set dressing when it comes to like, the grunge and all that stuff, it's all separate assets. So it looks different. So the buildings don't look like a mirror of each other. You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting process to work modularity because with modular assets, because you have to essentially set dress on top of them so they don't look like the exact same asset being repeated over and over and over and over again.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So would it just be like mostly decals and
In this particular workflow, yes. And of
okay,
course, assets that we would throw around to give
cool.
it more life and more storytelling to like, oh, they would take, you know, these big cargoes to this section here. So we would make like, a section where the cargo bay is versus, where hoses are kept, where, fire equipment is kept, where
Mm-hmm.
so we have a lot of these decals and all these things that kind of bring it to life of like, oh, this is a worked space. This is a space that is utilized in a way that makes sense and is grounded to the function of the fantasy world that is Apex Legends.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I want to point out the great design on it because if you look at the black and white values, it really shows the contrasts of the white and the darker values. So
Mm-hmm.
it's splitting it up into these major shapes. So you got your negative shapes in here at the dark, and then you got a little swoosh and the white going
Yeah,
that way, white going that. They're completely just pushing your eye and the focus in here. It's nice and balanced.
yeah,
Where everything's like bright here, that's kind of dark around here. It's just nicely it's nicely laid out
yeah, and
and
another thing that
value
we have
adjusted.
to yeah, and a thing that we have to always take care of too is like with our color choices and stuff. Like this is a pretty bold color choice. But
Mm-hmm.
also we need to make sure that it doesn't blend in with the characters at all, right? That like a character can't use this as camouflage, and we have different
Yeah.
ways of fixing that if that's like a Fresnel on like the character shader and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we also have to be very we were very deliberate with the color choices here, but normally when it comes to the visual hierarchy, we want to use much more desaturated colors and stuff like that. Again, having the environment be a little bit more desaturated than everything else because we don't want things to blend in with each other. That's a problem when you start getting into too much grunge or too much detail or too much things, is that
Mm-hmm.
it becomes harder and harder to see the objective, which is like, another team, another player, or doors or whatever, right? So again, having these call outs of like go here, if that's done with lighting or with color, is the most important thing that we can do, especially for Apex Legends, right? Other
Yeah.
games, there's different. Whoop, sorry, someone just went through went by the house. Um, Sounded like a fart, but I promise it wasn't. It was some, I don't know, two
Oh
stroke
man, I can smell
Honda.
it over
I
here.
know exactly. No, but yeah, so it's one of those things where like, again, the lighters did a great job with, making sure that like, hey, this hallway that you see down here or this door, those are the important things.
Yeah, it's cool. There's something. Ooh, that looks crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, so here, so that dome that you see there that has like the golden kind of like
Mm-hmm.
reflective surface, that's actually a big, essentially wall that rotates around. So you can
Yeah.
see that these tracks, I've put these tracks there at the where it contacts and it rotates. So I have like these big streaks like of like wheels or tires or things like that kind of leaving marks as it rotates and stuff like that. So again,
Oh,
just adding
cool.
in that kind of storytelling
Yeah.
there and all that. So yeah.
And what's your mindset of like adding the pipes in here and like another little
So
section over here?
with the level design, these are all cover points, right? These are all things where players use this as cover. So when we get them, they're normally just cubes, right? So it's up to
Mm-hmm.
us to set dress it and to make it look as grounded as
Yeah.
possible, right? So I can just give this like, hand wavy bullshit thing of like, oh, these pipes feed in the water
Yeah.
into this area, or these pipes,
Yeah.
get rid of like nuclear waste or whatever. You just try to make it make sense as much as possible, especially for the scenario that you're kind of doing, right? It's a thing that would make sense in an industrial kind of complex like this, right? Where it's like, oh, pipes make sense versus, oh, I'm going to put wooden beautiful art deco pieces in this industrial space, right? Like it's just one of those things, they don't go together, right, for the most part. So just kind of think about it as what space are you working in and what assets would fit in a way that makes the world feel grounded.
So for the level design blockouts, did you have basic shapes like this and the circular here
Yeah,
as well?
things
Yeah.
change a lot, but for the most part it was yeah, like we at least on the Apex side, we were very fortunate to have some amazing level designers who really thought about how the flow of the player works and how these shapes kind of work together. So yeah, it's a super awesome process to work with these like primitive shapes, and then it's up to me to just focus on the art side of stuff. You know what I mean? Again, things change here and there, but for the most part, having those candid conversations and having like a lot of communication with level designers of like, what are we trying to achieve, what are we trying to do, and then of course art direction and stuff like that. So
that's cool. All right, let's go to another one.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. So
there's a lot of stuff. It's funny looking back and seeing some of this stuff. Let's get out of Apex, unless, you know what, I wanted to actually look at where was it? I wanted just to show people how it's applied. I noticed it in one of them.
Sure.
It was materials. It was this one. You had shown how it was actually applied in the game, instead of just, so you had it like this, which is the material. But then how do you utilize it?
So we have a lot of blend materials here as well, right? So you can see here that I've also made like, a dirt kind of cracked texture that goes on top of it, but also utilizing the normals as macro normals for different materials as well. So like, not only do you have to make, so what's really cool is that, again, thinking about optimizations and stuff like that, what's really cool is that you can make like 3-4 different materials, and instead of making a bunch of brand new ones, you can use like the normals of one material to kind of break up what it looks like in other areas using like macro or micro things, right? So like if the albedo of this is working really nice, you can like overlay it on top of like a sand texture to kind of give you more color variation and things like that. So yeah, these materials are used in a ton of different ways. So, tiling the normal multiple times to get more fidelity or to get different breakups in the modulation of the texture itself versus like, just using a single material and it's just kind of like, bland the whole time, right? You can give it different kind of modularity and stuff.
Cool. Yep, it's so different from film, because film was just like, just
make it look pretty, make it look as
balls to the wall.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
You're it's part of the puzzle, right?
You have to. There's a lot of problem solving. Yeah.
All right. League of Legends.
Yeah.
What did you do here?
So here I was one of the environment artists for this cinematic. So this is like one of the only cinematics that saw the light of day. So here you can see that I modeled like a Misfortune's ship. I worked on a lot of the pillars here, a lot of the environments, texture work, things like that. So this was, man, if I could get into it, this could be hours and hours long. So essentially, we had many R&D projects with different styles and different things. But again, this is just a very basic kind of notion of like how we're using these reusing a lot of these environments and stuff like that. But again,
did you do the texturing as well, or
yeah, so like a lot of the texture work and a lot of the stuff, but also this used to be a whole different cinematic as well, and we just kind of like reused it for this particular cinematic for Rise.
And this was Unreal 3?
No, so this was, so if this is the funny thing. So when we started at Riot, we essentially wanted to do this. So we were able to achieve this look, but then we kind of became more and more like your Blurs, your Digic, your, those types of studios with a pre-rendered. We were using Arnold for this at the time, pre-rendered render farms, etc. So all of this is done in a pre-rendered form. So essentially, a lot of the stuff that we did prior was way more on the Unreal side, but we kind of regressed back to a traditional render pipeline for this particular cinematic, which is a shame because we had some pretty kick-ass stuff prior. So here, just a lot of the set dressing, a lot of the assets and things like that, even though a lot of it's in fog. A lot of the assets here and things like that was, material work on the ground and things like that. So
are you using the same kind of techniques in games versus, because it must be quite a different mindset when you're going from modeling this ship to doing games?
Yeah. So again, it's all modeled to camera, right? So there's like a lot of stuff that isn't modeled in the back of this, right? If we know that we're
Yeah,
never seeing the back of the ship, if we know that we're never
yeah,
seeing, past these doors here, like there's nothing modeled past these doors.
yeah.
We don't need to see them. So it's kind of they both share similarities, but I would say cinematics are a little bit easier in my opinion when it comes to modeling and stuff like that, because usually you're modeling to camera. There's a lot more work that goes into it because you're gold bricking everything, right? Like you're making it look as good as possible
Yeah.
for everything. But that being said, you don't have to think about like, how is the player going to interact with this? How is the player going to walk around this object when they go into the room and things like that? You just kind of are at, you're kind of at the graces of like, oh, this is you know the camera only goes here and it only sees this, so like past this wall there's nothing there. You know what I mean? You're just trying to make it look as good as possible, where in a game setting you are essentially trying to make it as good as possible from every angle with all the restrictions that you have. Yeah.
But you're not thinking about modularity, and
No.
you're not using decals. You're just
You're just modeling everything.
Yeah.
Like you do
Yeah.
use decals and stuff, but it's not anywhere near to the same kind of optimization or anything. And again, at the end of the day, as even if it takes an hour to render a frame, it is what it is with the render farm and stuff. So
yeah. The I would say that since you're modeling everything in film so detailedly, you're pushing your eye to the fullest is maybe a great path to then transitioning into games, because now you've really trained your eye into like what looks good.
Yeah, but I do feel like it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if you start off and like you model everything, because even then, if you look at this environment, I'm really letting the materials do most of the work, right? Like we have a lot of displacement, we have a lot of stuff like that, but like the actual model for this road is kind of a flat plane, right, with a couple of rocks and stuff, and then like we're using display. We have like the goodness of like displacement maps and stuff that like at render time you will get these really nice kind of light hits and details on the ground. But the modeling side itself is pretty simple in the sense of like, it's primarily all done in the material, and the materials and stuff like that are what you're putting the most work in my opinion. And also another thing that you need to think about, especially for animation, is how are the animators using your environments, right? It's really, really important for them to have contact points to know exactly where the, the things that things need to be one-to-one with their animations. So you can't have like the displacement come up, higher than the foot, or, where they're clipping and things like that. So even with film, you have to be pretty cautious and conscious of how, the animators are interacting with your sets and stuff. Right.
Yeah, that's why decimating is the best.
Yeah, exactly.
So in this work, how are you getting the chunks of this versus that? Because it's difficult to blend displacements and shaders.
It's very, very difficult. But again, it's you just kind of apply it and see how it looks, and then tune from there. Right. We were using Mari for a lot of this stuff, and yeah, so it's just. Usually in contact points, you do your best. It also depends on the shot. Like this is clearly like a much wider shot, so it's a little bit more forgiving that if he's floating a little bit or if he's clipping a little bit, you're not going to really see it, right?
Cool.
Yeah, we can go to more stuff, but essentially this was a cinematic that was compiled of a ton of other cinematics that we had in the pipe. That's the thing. It was a really weird one because we were working on a ton of different stuff. And it kind of all got compiled into this Rise cinematic that we did. But it was, believe it or not, it was a completely different style. It was a much more stylistic style. It was that of like, think of like Spider-Verse, think of Arcane, that kind of stuff. And then we moved to a much more, hyper realistic kind of thing. So if you go to the bottom there, so that character model was done by the amazing Alessandro Baldasseroni, fucking incredible character artist. It was amazing working with him. But like, yeah, one of these shots, or one of the ones to the left, I had, like the eyeball one. Yeah. Yep. so here, right, like having to create the shader for the ice and sculpting this huge like ice cliff and things like that. It's this was honestly probably like one of the funnest things, and like this gigantic ice wall that is in front of this, you know, character. But again, trying to make it as stylistic as possible, but at the same time still having like real world properties.
Mm-hmm. That's a really cool shot.
Yeah, it's
so magical. And the thing is that, you know, it's not photoreal. It's stylized, cinematic stylized. Mm-hmm. So it sticks out, and it's just cool because you're not thinking, oh, it looks fake.
Yeah.
Right. It's just cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps with the fantasy, right? You're not making like, you know, the most realistic, you know, hey, this has to be 1-to-1 with reality or whatever, right? This clearly has magic. This clearly has like deities and fantasy elements, right? So it also helps with that.
Yeah, like pushing up the extra glows. And
absolutely,
stuff like that. Like the just exaggerating, kind of like the hyper realism thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like it's one of the issues I had with The Hobbit, where it's like it felt like it's just too hyper real, where it stuck out and didn't blend with the film. Versus like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was like more desaturated, you know?
Sure.
And it was just kind of blended. And it's just, it's like, this is where it works. This is like, because it's supposed to be obviously fake. And that's what's
absolutely. And again, to what we talked about earlier, it's all about the output. Who cares if it's like a realistic ice shader or not realistic ice shader? It's like, as long as it does the job and it gets us the frame that we want, then then there is no right way, right? As long as it looks good. So here getting that, like, you know, that translucency, that kind of like subsurface, that scattering, you know, to look as good as possible was, you know, a lot of fun, but also very challenging because we were trying out a ton of different, you know, styles at the time as well. So I love this shot personally. It's like one of my favorite shots. I think it almost looks like a concept piece to me. And this was like, the thing that we were really trying to achieve was like kind of like moving concept art. Not for this particular cinematic, but for a lot of the cinematics that we were doing before. I wish I could show this stuff, but you know, sadly I can't.
Yeah. There goes life of being an artist.
Because this eye shader and stuff was much more stylistic and much more brush strokey and stuff like that. And it was very, very cool. Not that this looks bad or anything like that, you know, but it is one of those things where it was like a completely different style. Same thing with the characters.
And how'd you do the eye? Was it just
the eye is just a mesh, with emissives, right? Like it's an actual mesh. So essentially here it's just a single like what's it called? Like plane, just a glass plane with, you know, I made shaders and I made you know, textures for it. And essentially we just try to make it like, you know, kind of like there was something trapped in the ice, but it's able to move in the ice, almost like a mirror, if you would.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's neat. All right.
We can go to other stuff if you want.
Yeah, this is hardcore. You did the whole set?
So this one was done in collaboration with another artist as well. And we just, a ton, like a few. It was only like, at this point in time, I was the only environment artist for a long time. And then we hired like 2 more guys. And then a couple of the lighters actually started doing some environment stuff as well. So it's all like big calibration stuff.
Cool. Was there any painting, DNP on top of it at all?
There's a ton of compositing. Yeah.
Okay.
Not painting, but a ton of compositing. Like we had compers, we had lighters, we had like, it was a full on production studio. You know what I mean? It wasn't like this was not rendered in real time. This was not like anything magical. This was a traditional pipeline, if you would, like you would at any other cinematic kind of studio.
Cool.
Yeah. Like Eric Durante did a lot of this stuff. He did the amazing lighter and stuff like that. So a lot of us just tag teamed a bunch of stuff. Yeah. And was able to learn a ton because this was honestly at the time too, where I was still like a senior, you know, at Riot and stuff. So.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say senior because I didn't even know there was a thing called principal artists or anything high. Because usually it just goes from senior to lead to supervisor.
And I think that's a problem. And I really, really think that's a problem because to me, a principal artist is just someone that's like a super senior.
Yeah.
right? It's much more craft focused than it is leadership focused. Because to me, leadership is a completely different skill set to craft, right?
Mm-hmm.
The management style and stuff like that. Because there are people who are amazing artists, right, and can do their work and all this stuff, but suck at being leaders, right?
Yeah.
Or don't want to go down that path. That's kind of where I'm at. Like I've done leadership in the past. I just did not enjoy it. It's not for me. It's not a thing that I'm super passionate about. Not that I can't do it. It's just not a thing that I'm super into when it comes to delegating work, being in meetings, and essentially not doing what I feel like I'm good at, which is being on the box and creating artwork and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So to me, it's like it sucks that you have to go into this state of like, oh, my only path forward in order to get more financially stable, in order to get more this or that, is going down the leadership route, right? But not everyone can be art director. Not everyone can be CEO. Not everyone can be this. So it's really interesting to me that people who are wanting to do their job and who are good at their job still get financially kind of screwed over, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's just another, to me, it's the same kind of tree, um, just a different branch, right? So because
Yeah.
like here it kind of stops at senior, and it's like, cool, you're a senior artist. That means you're good at your craft, you're good at what you do, you know the pipelines, you know how to work at a studio. But then going to leadership, it's like, cool, I'm no longer doing my craft, I'm no longer doing the thing that I'm good at, I'm no longer doing this, and I have to do a completely different, different mind shift and stuff like that when it comes to management. And also now I'm becoming irrelevant on the art side because, like I said earlier, you need to stay on top of the latest and greatest just to stay even balanced. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Within pipelines and stuff. So if you're
Yeah.
doing leadership stuff, usually it's hard for you to balance out, oh, I still want to do artwork or I still want to do this, right?
Yeah.
And then you give that kind of job to your, juniors, your mids, your seniors, right? Where to
Mm-hmm.
me, a principal is just a super senior and they're more craft focused, right? It still comes with management things, if that's mentorship, if that's documentation, if that's
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Um, but to me, it should be on par with, that of a lead or art
Yeah.
director or whatever, right?
Yeah, they did start. I remember they were starting this whole thing called key artists, and that was a new one,
Yeah.
which was like above senior. It was like
It's
kind
weird.
of
It's all
yeah,
different names. Yeah.
yeah. There's
Some
so many different ones, and then there's like, and then I noticed in games has so many. There's just way more in games and
I think
in
that's a very
VFX.
recent thing. It's a
It's getting
very, very
annoying
recent
actually
thing.
because there's like artist two, artist
Yeah.
three, then
That's arbitrary.
principal, and then art. What it's
Yeah.
like? What is going on? It's
That's
like
arbitrary purely to kind of gauge where you're at and to kind of give you the like, hey, you can achieve this thing, right? Because that's a thing that I feel like it kind of sucks because it almost feels insulting of like, okay, cool, I need to get to artist 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, because again, it's different for every studio.
Mhm.
Some studios just
Yeah, that's
have
just the thing.
senior, some studios have principal, some studios have all these different weird like levels of mid or senior or junior, right? It's like
Yeah.
associate, junior associate, blah 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 this, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Again, it's completely arbitrary, and I think it's just a way of being like, cool, you now achieved this status. It's kind of like a like, we can keep you at this level and just tell you that you're doing better. And the way I prove to you that you're doing better is that you've now gone from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, or however it's done at a studio. And
Well, hopefully they're getting compensated for that.
well, yeah, I think that's the point, right? But it's
Yeah.
to go from, a senior to a lead, I feel like it's really difficult, like not difficult, but in the sense of like, if that's not a thing that you want to do, but that's the only route that you can go to in order to be like more financially, you
Yeah.
know, compensated and stuff like that. It's I think it's really dangerous. I think people shouldn't be punished for doing well at their job and having to
Mhm.
go into a completely different field or a completely different, to me, like different mindset slash different workflows to be, financially compensated at a reasonable thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like when it comes to principal artist or lead or anything like that, it's same, it's a ton of responsibilities regardless, right? You've become a people manager. Yeah, you have responsibilities, you have this, you have that, but also as a craftsperson, going back to like, I can't turn off at the end of the day. I have to continuously work to stay relevant and to stay at a principal level, or to stay at a teacher level. I have to go out and teach. I have to go out and work on personal projects. I have to do this in order to be like, see, I'm at this level because of X, right? Where if you're a lead or something like that, again, it's completely different at every studio, but for the most part, when you go into leadership, you start kind of fading away on the art side or things like that, or you kind of honed your skill enough to where, cool, I know what I can talk about in this and this. Especially if you're a new lead, you're still kind of relevant in that sense. But if you've been doing leadership for the last like 20 years, 30 years, whatever, maybe you have no idea what a normal map is. Maybe you have no idea how workflows work. Maybe you have, you know what I mean? And it's just like, or you have no idea how your pipeline works, right? You just know that these people will take care of this, this, and this. And it's just, I think it's really, really bizarre that we have chosen as a game industry to kind of go for this very corporate style way of hierarchy, where we have the full opportunity to kind of make our own and to, make it achievable for everyone, because not everyone wants to go into leadership. Not everyone wants to be the CEO. Not everyone wants to be art director. But in order to get, like I said earlier, like financial compensation that makes sense for what you're doing and stuff like that, that seems to be the only thing that gains respect, or the thing that gains, financial, compensation that's, meaningful in a way. So yeah, it's strange. I have opinions on it and stuff like that, but it's just kind of the way the studios have worked for the last, 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And this is all industries. This is film, this is corporate, this is games, whatever,
Well, I find in film, because I led and was soup at one point, and I still had to do stuff, and I still had to do a lot of like behind the scenes, just figure out new workflows, new techniques and stuff like that. And the VFX soups, they were still learning and doing different techniques. So I think maybe it's different, or maybe it's just different for the size of the studio as well, of what responsibilities you have. Like, yeah, you're not doing the artwork so much unless it's like a really important piece, but you're still, I mean, you still kind of have to know what's going on in the industry, like what software is happening, some methods, you have to come up with new problem solving kind of things.
Yeah, but usually it's delegation, right? It's like, oh, I trust my team to do this, this, and this, and like, usually absolutely, you never touch the work. And I hear from a bunch of leads and stuff like how much they miss, doing artwork.
That was part of the reason. Yeah, I remember after I was lead, I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to go back to doing the artwork.
Yeah.
But then what happens is that they start taking advantage of you. And then that's what happened with me. Was like, I was supposed to be just a regular artist, didn't want to deal with any of this stuff, and then they just kept on putting me into that position, but never giving me the title or raise. And it's just like, I'm getting taken advantage of. What the heck?
No,
like,
and
it's just
kind of to what I was saying earlier. It's like, that's a thing that happened to me at a certain studio, where it really felt like no matter how much I pushed, no matter how much I pushed my craft, no matter how much I, like made very detailed, PowerPoints or spreadsheets of like what I've achieved at this place or what I brought to the table, it didn't seem to matter because I couldn't move up if I wanted to stay in art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had to like move into leadership. I had to move into something for it to be any sort of meaningful upgrade in my financial status or in my, respected, title, right? Which I don't care about titles, but I do care about the, financial compensation. Sadly, I have to care about the financial compensation that I get. I have to pay rent. I have to buy groceries. I have to, do that stuff. Sadly, like as much as I would love to be able to be at a certain salary that works for the studio and stuff like that, there is certain things that people need to live with. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that goes for everyone. So to me, it sucks that being good at a thing, or being um staying in a thing that you really want to do, right? If you're a mid-level artist, junior level artist, or anything like that, it is a thing that I think needs to change. That, you know, there should be compensation, there should be things that are in place for you at a studio to stay, you know, as an artist, or stay at the job that you're good at. You know what I mean? And again, I don't know what that looks like. I'm not saying, hey, everyone should get, you know, $3 million a year, and because of course that's not, you know, achievable. But it is one of those things where it's like, hey, at least the respect side should be there of like, oh, actually, as an artist, you do X, Y, and Z, and you're doing mentorship, and you're doing documentation, you're doing a bunch of leadership stuff. We just don't have the title for you as a lead, or this or this, or, you know, especially if you're working closely with the art director, especially if you're becoming almost like a pseudo art director, because, you know, you have the most experience at a studio or things like that when it comes to your craft or whatever. At that point, it's just really weird that it's like, okay, well, I'm doing like all these art director level tasks and art director level like meetings, but I'm not getting anywhere compensated as an art director or a lead or anything like that.
Yeah. That's where you have to take, you know, things into your own hands and just leave, go somewhere else, find something else. Don't feel like you're stuck there and have to take the abuse. But
sure. Yeah, but it is one of those things where it just also sucks, right? Especially if you really like the studio and you like the team and you like that, right? It's again, it's a huge spectrum, and I'm not trying to say that like any studio does this or does that, or it's just purely like places that I've worked at.
Yeah, there's thousands of studios.
Yeah. And yeah, some places are much better than others when it comes to management. Some places compensate people the way they should. Some places are, you know, trust their artists.
Well, this is where I mean,
like that,
this is what I mean. It's like, you know, you want to search around, shop around, see, get the different experiences at different locations, so you know what to compare it to. Because when you go to that first dream studio, when you first start out, it's like you fall in love with it, and you kind of tend to just stick it, like stay there, because it's like your dream studio you've always want to be at. But then you have no experience of what other studios are like. You're just thinking, oh, well, this is the top in the world, and they all must be like this, but they aren't all the same.
Absolutely.
So,
and there's a lot of people, like, the thing that's really interesting to me too is that a lot of places will really, what's the word I'm looking for? They will really they see time as more important than experience. You know what I mean? Like, time at a studio is more important than your experience at many different studios, right? Where like if you're at a studio for a long time, maybe you get into a certain position because like you were there during the early days, or you were there during this time or this time, right? And it happens at a lot of studios where like, you know, the art director maybe doesn't know anything about art and doesn't know anything, but he's like, you know, he or she is like best friends with the person who made the studio or something, right? Like it's there's stuff like that happens as well, where you know, a lot of studios really respect more time spent there than they do experience from people they're hiring, or someone who's newer or anything like that.
Well, got to make our own game. All right, let's see. Is there anything? Oh, you still have more pages. Okay.
So this is getting more into the material stuff that I really, really enjoy doing. So this is more of my personal work that I really enjoy playing around with and just kind of creating stuff. So like, you know, going from making, you know, so we can go to that rune generator there. So these again are just like, I see them a lot as like sketches and stuff like that. So I just like to play around and kind of go from there. But this is essentially a rune generator that I made that it could be applied to skin, it could be applied to metal or whatever. Essentially, it just creates all these bullshit runes for you in a material. And all these
how do you runes, generate the shapes?
So this is all done in Substance Designer. And again, with, you know, nodes and transforms and stuff, all these shapes are essentially just lines that I've then put into different shapes. These runes don't mean anything. They're just complete nonsense. But if you go to the video, that kind of shows what the shader is capable of.
Shoot. Whoops. Wrong button. Let me go back.
No worries. But yeah, this is the stuff that I really enjoy doing. And I think this is one of the things that I feel is like really important as well. It's like one thing to make good looking art, but it's also really nice to be able to be on the more tech side of it as well, right? Where you can actually apply more learnings and stuff like that to your assets and to your thing. So here you can see how like the runes move and things like that. So it's purely just simple transforms on these shapes that then, you know, give you different rune shapes and stuff like that.
That's
Right.
cool. So did you have them split up into several nodes for each individual group of shapes, or?
Essentially, yeah. And what these transforms are doing is just kind of like moving and blending between each other
That's
to
dope.
give you different kind of styles. And of course, I've added an emissive here. So it's just cool stuff. And I kind of like imagine if this is like coming out of the wall or something, right?
Yeah, that's really
Um,
cool.
so yeah, there's some fun stuff like that. So this is more of like my personal work that I just really enjoy doing. Like if I was put into a studio and I was in a room and I was able to just do exactly what I wanted to do, it would be, you know, creating materials and sculpting all day. Right. That's the pipe dream kind of thing. But, you know, at a studio, you usually have to be a jack of all trades. You usually have to be, especially once you get more senior, you really have to be able to do so much. Right. And it's kind of getting to the point where, of course, studios don't want to pay for a lighter. They don't want to pay for a material artist. They don't want to pay for a modeler, right? A separate jobs.
Yeah,
They want someone who can
a
essentially do it all,
generalist.
right?
Yeah.
But do it at a quality that, you know, is up to par with, you know, having someone who's hyper focused on, you know, modeling or lighting or whatever, right? So um it's tough, man. I think it's becoming a much tougher and tougher industry to break into because you have to learn so much. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough to learn from so many great artists and have just the time spent to do, you know, my personal work. I'm coming up on like almost 16 years in the game industry, 15 years. You know what I mean? So this is all comes with time. And that's another thing too for junior artists is like, don't think that right out of the gate your portfolio is going to be this, you know, amazing thing with a ton of artwork from studios or from personal projects or whatever. You asked me earlier, like, what's like some advice that I would want to give juniors for portfolios and stuff is like, I care more about your thought process and I care about finished pieces versus a ton of mediocre pieces and a ton of things that are just images, right? Like I want to see how you thought about making this. I want to see if you're making an environment, like how did you approach modularity? What kind of learnings do you have? Things like that, right? Where on a portfolio, I'd rather see one or two different, you know, portfolio pieces rather than, you know, 20 different portfolio pieces that are all kind of mediocre, right? But within those two pieces, I want to see like, how did you think about the modularity of this environment? How did you create these materials? How did you create the models? Things like that, right?
This is cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, again, this was just another test that I did. It was like I wanted to do some paint stroke kind of effects and things like that. And I found a node called the Atlas Splatter, and I just tested some things out, and it worked out. This one got a lot of attention, which is really really cool.
Well, it's stylized.
Yeah,
So
and
it's just cool.
it's also stylized. But yeah, essentially, it's splattering paint strokes around in a way where, like, you know, it feels purposeful and, you know, things like that. And again, we have different maps like the roughness and the normals and stuff doing things that make it a little bit more eye catching. But yeah, again, just the great thing about Substance Designer is it's primarily made for materials, but it's great what you can do in a non-destructive workflow.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, is there one more you want to go over before we call it?
No. Honestly, well, like maybe the the Gutty Works is fun, but like the other one that's like the volcanic rock and stuff. I literally have this volcanic rock on my desk and I just liked it, so I decided to make it. So you can see the ref image there. Right
sweet.
there. So there's the ref image that just lives on my desk, and I thought it was really cool. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna try to make this, and yeah, again, just try to make it like as modular and stuff for people. So just
Cool.
a fun thing. And one more piece that I'd like to talk about, if we go back, is kind of using these kind of learnings and stuff for, if you go to page 3 or maybe or one before this yet, you'll see some Dauntless stuff. So what I did on Dauntless, so the one that has all the one to the left of that one, perfect.
Okay, we didn't see all these. Okay.
No, there's a ton of stuff. So make sure to hit Atmo and check out people's portfolios and stuff. So
Yeah, man.
If you look at that first video, the one to the right there.
This one?
Yeah, so this is a good showcase of kind of how I use my substance designer learnings and substance painter learnings to kind of be beneficial to the team, right? So it's not just me making a cool looking material or anything. So this is making smart materials and, things that the team itself can use to make sure that we get our workflows kind of aligned and working. So here I've made a substance designer graph, and it goes into Painter, and using essentially the maps that are baked onto these assets, I've exposed these parameters so the artist can go in here and work with this fulgurite material that I made for the game Dauntless. And essentially they can art direct how they want this fulgurite to look, and this obsidian to kind of glow and go through. But essentially the artist doesn't have to kind of go in here and completely remake everything. They can just use the graph that I made, and essentially not even use the graph. Just the graph is just showing how the smart material is made. And then to the right there, you see all those parameters that the artist then plugs in their mesh maps, and they're able to control this as much as they want and art direct it as much as they want, right? So along with just making really fun materials and stuff for myself, it also comes with a lot of learnings of like, oh shit, I can use it for this and I can use it for that. And that just, again, comes with experience, that comes with just doing. And these are great ways to implement these workflows into a studio setting, right? So this can now be shared with a bunch of different teams. This could be shared with a bunch of different artists, etc. And yeah, to me, these are the benefits of like playing around and figuring stuff out. Again, because everything should be beneficial to the team as well, and what you do as like when it comes to being more of a principal artist or a senior artist or anything like that. It should be stuff that you're, trying to work on workflows and make sure that your juniors, your mids, and everyone else is able to be focusing on the work that they're trying to do, and not trying to troubleshoot or trying to remake everything multiple times and things like that. So
yeah. So this it's kind of like when people were making tools for Houdini.
It's exactly the same thing. Yeah, this is just a different level of that. And I'm not saying everyone needs to learn how to do this, but it is a thing that's always going to be beneficial, right? And again, and every different software has its own things too. So like in Unreal, we can make Y-up shaders, and we can make different types of transparent shaders and fake. So this is all like fake subsurface and stuff like that, right? So yeah, so it's also really important to learn what engines can do as well, because one thing to learn to know how to model, to know how to make materials and stuff like that, but you also need to know what are the capabilities of the game engine that you're working, and what it can and can't do, and how much work you should do inside of the engine versus outside of the engine, right? Because if you don't need to do all of the work in Maya or Substance or anything like that, and you can achieve a bunch of the stuff in engine, then you should do that.
So what do you think about knowing all the different engines? Do studios really care if you know that engine?
Yes, if you are working in a very specific engine, right? So if a studio is working in Unreal and you don't know Unreal, well, then that's going to be pretty difficult, right? If they're working in Unity and you don't know Unity, that's going to be difficult. If they're working in a different engine, again, these are all things that can be learned and stuff, but you'll always be more valuable if you know your way around the engine and stuff like that. So if games is a thing that you want to get into, figure out what the most popular kind of game engines are. If it's usually Unreal is a great one because it has a ton of different resources and stuff. And the great thing about game engines, just like software, is that they're a lot of the same kind of principles, right? A lot of the same things that get applied in every game engine you can usually do in a single game engine. You're like, cool, I know how to make a Y-up shader here. the same principles kind of apply for other game engines as well. It's just kind of finding, it's like kind of going from like Maya to Blender, right? It's like once you know Maya and once you know what you're doing in the sense of like, oh, I want to bevel this edge, I want to extrude this, then you kind of go into Blender and be like, oh, how do I bevel? How do I extrude? It's the same things. It's all just basic principles that need to be learned more. That's more important than the actual software.
When you're thinking about performance stuff, at what point are you thinking about that the most?
The most, honestly, it's with experience, it's usually the whole time. Yeah. But I will say, you know, when you're junior, when you're mid, when you're super early on into this stuff, you're not really thinking about it. But it's also a thing that you should be kind of helped with as well, right? Because if as a junior or as a mid-level, I expect you to do X amount of work or expect you to do this and this and this, right? But I don't expect you to know everything that goes into optimization. I don't expect you to know everything that goes into shader work. I don't expect you to know all of that stuff. So it's also my job as a senior or a principal or a lead to like be able to explain that to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is a give and take. But for me personally, at this point, because I've worked in games for X amount of years, I think about this stuff all the time because it's always a thing that, you know, kicks us in the ass at the end of production.
Yeah.
Always at the end of production. And that's what I'm trying to alleviate as much as possible for myself and for my team.
Yeah. Cool. All right, dude. It's been great catching up again.
Yeah.
Picking at your brain.
Yeah. And sorry we went on all different types of tangents and stuff and all
that's
this
what
stuff.
This is like.
Yeah.
It's always like this.
Yeah. So it's it's been awesome. Thank you for having me on. It's really, really, really cool to catch up again and talk about industry stuff again. If it got a little bleak for anyone who's listening and stuff, I'm so sorry, but it is just kind of like what it is right now, you know what I mean? But if we ever want to do another one of these and have it be a little bit more on the positive side and stuff, we can really just focus on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, dude. I mean, these are the realities of the industry and we all have to talk about it. It's nothing to, you know, hide from, because it is what it is. And it's not just our industry. It's basically all of tech as a whole. And everywhere else, like it's just crazy times.
It's tough. It's really, really tough right now.
Yeah. So, all right, dude. So before we leave, do you want to name some spots of where they can reach you, contact you, follow you, etc.?
Sure. Yeah, no, I love hearing from everyone. So you can find me on Atmo. You can find me there. Juan Nuno is usually what you can search for. Same thing with other platforms. Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these different places. It's usually Kill the Butcher. Kill _ the _ butcher is usually like my handle. But yeah, more than happy to always chat with anyone. And I love being able to share anything in any capacity that I can and help anyone out. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. I think we talked about it earlier, but like, yeah, just get out there, reach out, especially if you're trying to break into the industry and stuff. Just remember that everyone's just a regular person. You know what I mean? No one's like a deity or this or this. So reach out to your favorite artist, reach out to anyone. And the worst thing that happens is that they don't read it or they don't reply and nothing changed, you know?
Yeah. And maybe we'll find you on Discord too.
Absolutely.
The Discord.
Yeah.
So people hanging out there, if you little gamers want to ask some questions, you can reach them out directly there. I'll be there. Some other artists are there too.
Yeah.
So hang out, join Atmo, support, spread the word, and yeah, we'll call this the end.
Yeah. Take it easy, everyone.
See ya. Bye-bye.
See ya.